It was the winter of 2008, freezing cold. I'm Erbau, 67 years old, retired from my job as a section chief at the Beijing Public Security Bureau. I never married. I spent my whole life taking care of my drunk father and my mentally disabled sister. They both passed away last year, and after that I just stayed home, reading, carving wood, drinking alone. I barely went outside anymore. My old buddies dragged me out for winter swimming in the Kunyu River near the Summer Palace. I stripped down to my blue swim trunks, jumped into the ice hole, and dove deep. That's when I saw a flash of light at the bottom. I swam toward it and pulled a pearl from the mud, a rare Dongju pearl, the kind that only royals used to wear. Before I could swim back, the pearl shot a beam of white light into my palm, and a force pulled me down. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a strange place, sunny, quiet, about the size of a football field. There was a courtyard house, black soil, and nothing else. No people, no sounds. I went inside and found a well, but the rooms were all completely empty. I pulled up a bucket of water and saw a face in the reflection, a teenage boy. It was me, the way I looked at 17 or 18. My arms were thin, the age spots were gone. I was wearing old gray long underwear with the words, Advanced Worker, and Red Star Steel Rolling Mill printed on it, a prize from my father's factory. Then I heard a little voice calling, "Brother," and suddenly I was somewhere else, lying on a heated brick bed under a thick quilt. A little girl peeked through the door curtain. When I saw her face, I started crying. It was my sister Nuni, 3 or 4 years old, skinny but beautiful, her cheeks red from the cold, wearing a blue floral padded jacket and a red knitted scarf. I jumped off the bed, grabbed her, and sobbed. I looked around the room. The bookshelf, the little desk, 2 stools, the wall clock. Everything was exactly how our old side room used to look. I carried Nuni to the calendar on the wall. The date read December 28th, 1958. 50 days before the new year. It hit me then. I had been reborn. It was late 1958. My mother wouldn't die of illness for another 3 years. My sister wouldn't get the wrong medicine during a fever and lose her mind for another 4 years. There was still time to change everything. While I was lost in thought, Nuni yelled for our mother. Mom came rushing in, pulled a broom handle from under the mattress, and started whacking me, scolding me for going swimming in the icy river with the neighborhood kids. It hurt like hell. Mom never held back. But the pain also proved one thing. This wasn't a dream. Mom finally stopped hitting me when she saw me crying. She was more scared than angry. My classmates had carried me home soaking wet and unconscious after I choked on water while swimming on a dare. In her mind, her 3 kids were everything. She also blamed my dad, Chin Xinyu, for what happened with my education. I'd actually had good grades, good enough for college. But the day before my exam last August, Dad bought a pound of pork belly to cook braised meat as encouragement. The meat was spoiled. That night the whole family ended up in the hospital on 4 drips, and I missed the exam. Mom was furious. I didn't want to repeat a year, so the plan was to find me a job instead. But Dad was too honest and had no connections, so nothing came through. I'd been stuck at home ever since. Mom had no job either. All 5 of us lived on Dad's salary alone, and he still had to help out his parents and siblings on top of that. Money was always tight. She checked my forehead for fever, then softened up. She figured it wasn't fair to blame me for running around outside. What else was a young man supposed to do sitting at home all day? Half a year of martial arts training with Master Tong had at least kept me healthy. Looking at Mom alive and well made me want to cry again. In my previous life, after she died of illness, everything fell apart. Dad loved her so much that he drowned himself in alcohol and became the neighborhood drunk. And because I was always busy taking care of drunk Dad, I neglected my little sister when she got a high fever. She was taken to the hospital too late, and then some half-baked doctor gave her the wrong injection. Nuni became mentally disabled forever. I spent decades looking after both of them. Little Nuni crawled into Mom's arms, grinning and sneaking peeks at me. The little schemer, always sucking up to Mom. I asked about my younger brother, Chin Erbau, who was 7. Mom reminded me he'd been sent to Grandma's house in Qinjia village last week because he was too wild to keep at home. Dad was working overtime at the factory, so he could take 2 days off. Our cousin Gooden's engagement party was in 3 days. I remembered that engagement. Something ridiculous had happened at it, which got me curious. Mom said we'd head to the countryside tomorrow morning and bring 10 pounds of cornmeal for Grandpa. Then a neighbor shouted that the vegetable shop had big radishes, and Mom grabbed her ration booklet and rushed out, telling me to watch Nuni. She promised to make stuffed buns when she got back. I put on my padded jacket and pants, huge baggy things, but surprisingly comfortable, and stepped outside to look around the courtyard. Our home was in Nanloogu Alley, right in the center of Beijing. The alley ran between Gulu Street and Pingan Street, lined with courtyard houses. The ones near Gulu were the fancy multi-courtyard compounds. Ours was just a simple one-courtyard place. A big messy yard, as old Beijingers would say. 6 families lived in our compound, over 30 people crammed together. But our family had it decent. 2 main rooms and 1 side room for 5 people. I'd barely stepped out when Annie Nyo came out of the east wing and started nagging me about the swimming. These neighborhood ladies could talk your ears off, and you couldn't ignore them or they'd follow you inside to keep going. I deflected by asking if her son Nyo Dolly had found work yet. That did the trick. Her face dropped. Dolly had graduated middle school 3 years ago and was still doing odd manual labor jobs with his father. I told her I'd heard the railway depot was hiring locomotive crew, middle school diploma, strong body, clean family background. She could start as a stoker, shoveling coal into the engine. Her eyes lit up, and she rushed back inside to tell her husband. I remembered that Dolly really did end up working on the railways after the new year and eventually became a train driver. We stayed good friends. I wandered around the yard, feeling sentimental about every little thing, even the honeycomb coal stove by our door. Then Nuni called for me from inside, so I went back in to look after her. Some things never change. In my past life and now, I'm still wrapped around my little sister's finger. Dad came home late, exhausted from work. We didn't eat dinner until he got back. He was a tall man, over 6 feet, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, a real northern Chinese look. I got his height, but my face came from Mom. My brother and sister took after her too. Dad was honest to a fault when sober, but after drinking he'd transform, bragging, waving his arms around, acting like a completely different person. After reading that book about multiple personalities in my previous life, I always suspected he had a mild case of it. He sat there holding Nuni, listening to Mom complain, smiling as he broke off a piece of corn bun for my sister. Mom put a pot of corn porridge on the table, grumbling about how the vegetable shop only got 200 pounds of radishes and they were already gone by the time she arrived. She wanted to buy some to make stuffed buns for us kids. Now it was just porridge and pickled vegetables. Dad didn't say anything to me about the swimming incident. He'd heard about it from Mom, but didn't make a fuss. Boys do stupid things. That's just how it is. But he wouldn't encourage it either. Parents back then didn't coddle their kids. You had too many of them to spoil, so they basically raised themselves. As long as you came home to eat and sleep, that was good enough. I slurped some porridge. It was thick, at least, but it scratched my throat going down. Our family of 5 all had city registration, so we each got food rations, enough to not starve. That was all thanks to Dad. He'd gone from a village kid to a city worker because he'd served as an underground courier before liberation. Afterward, he was rewarded with a factory job and brought the whole family to Beijing. If he'd had any education, he would have become a cadre. Instead, he was still a level 6 fitter, making 72.50 yuan a month. Then Dad mentioned that after the new year, individual food rations would be cut again. Mom's face fell. She put down her bowl. She said the village commune cafeteria had already shut down, and my grandparents and Dad's younger brothers had almost nothing to eat. She'd been planning to save from our share to help them, but now our own rations wouldn't be enough either. Dad sighed and said he'd make extra runs to the black market at night if he had to. He couldn't let his parents go hungry. Mom didn't eat her corn bun. She wanted to save it so my sister and I could eat a little more. That was just Mom, always putting us first. She told me to take all 20 pounds of cornmeal to the countryside tomorrow, not just 10. Grandma and Grandpa would rather starve themselves than let my little brother Erbau go hungry. I put down my bowl. I really couldn't eat anymore. The corn porridge burned my throat and gave me heartburn. Dad noticed I looked down and figured I was still shaken up from nearly drowning. He had no idea I was thinking about the secret space. He told me to go to bed and stop reading in the dim light. I went back to my room, and that night I lay on the bed trying to figure out how to enter the space again. I tried all kinds of passwords, radio call signs, lines from movies, open sesame. Nothing worked. Then I just blurted out, let me in, and instantly I was there, standing in front of the courtyard and the black soil. I said, "Get out," and I was back on my bed. I felt like an idiot for overcomplicating it. All I had to do was think about going in or out, and it happened. I tested the space's powers. I looked at the storage chest by my bed and thought, take it. It vanished. I checked the space with my mind. There it was, sitting on the floor of the side room in the courtyard. I thought it back, and it reappeared right where it had been. I almost passed out from excitement. Not only was my family alive and well, I had a cheat power too. Then reality hit me. I searched my pockets and found exactly 1 yuan and 20 cents. Pretty embarrassing for a reborn man. I experimented more and found I could store anything within 2 meters just by willing it. Items sorted themselves into the right rooms inside the space automatically. Bedroom furniture went to the bedrooms, never the main hall. Very orderly. I made some plans in my head and fell asleep. Next morning I washed up, kissed Nuni goodbye, and headed out with the sack of cornmeal on my back. Mom slipped me 5 yuan and 2 pounds worth of grain coupons. Ration tickets had been the way of life since 1955. Little slips of paper controlling everything people could buy. Beijing alone had over 300 types of tickets in circulation. The neighbors were all up, crowding around the water basin, greeting each other. They seemed surprised I was being so chatty. Apparently the old me was pretty quiet. I said hello to Uncle Neo, invited Uncle Sue for a chess game, teased Annie Zhao about her kid wetting the bed again. These neighbors meant a lot to me. In my previous life, they'd helped me take care of Dad and my sister many times. Once I got out of the alley, I found a quiet corner and tossed the 20-pound sack of cornmeal into the space. No way was I hauling that thing for 20 miles on foot. And don't underestimate 20 pounds of cornmeal. It was already 1959 in effect, and the 3 years of famine had begun. Hardly anyone in the country could eat their fill. In the countryside, 20 pounds of cornmeal could buy you 2 brides. By 1960, the bride price for a wife would be just 5 pounds of corn. Nanlogo Alley was about 800 meters long. It was early, so the shops were still shuttered. Only the breakfast stand at the corner was open, the smell of fried dough drifting through the thick door curtain. I couldn't resist. I went in and bought an oil cake for 5 cents and 1 liang of grain coupons. I ate it while walking toward Gulu Street to catch the bus. I needed to get to Qinjiao village at the foot of Wanger Mountain. That meant 2 bus transfers, getting off near the Summer Palace, then walking another 40-some minutes. The streets were packed with workers in gray and blue uniforms heading to their jobs. Every now and then a bicycle would pass by, drawing envious stares from everyone. In this era, a bicycle cost 286 yuan plus a special bicycle ticket, the equivalent of a BMW in the future. A guy who owned one could have his pick of girls. Gulu Street was lined with shops, the co-op, the food store, the vegetable shop, the grain shop, restaurants, one after another. That was the best thing about living on Nanlogo Alley. Everything you needed was right there. Big loudspeakers on the street played songs, waking up Beijing every morning. People lined up neatly at the bus stop. Nobody pushed or shoved. The ticket lady on the bus would set you straight in a heartbeat if you tried. That chaotic shoving you see in movies didn't start until the 70s and 80s. But once you got on the bus, it was a nightmare. People packed so tight that short folks got lifted off the ground, squeezed between bodies, unable to breathe until the next stop. And the smell. In winter it was tolerable, but in summer it was armpit stink, farts, and who knows what else. After 2 miserable hours of bus rides, I finally stepped onto snowy ground and took a deep breath. I needed to make money fast and buy a bicycle. This commute was torture. I passed the South Rui Gate and stood on the frozen surface of the Kunyu River, the same place where I'd drowned and been reborn. I knelt down on the ice and thanked it silently. Then I walked along the river toward Wanger Mountain. The farther I went, the fewer people I saw. Everything was covered in white snow, clean and endless. Qinjiao village sat at the foot of the mountain. It looked desolate now, but in the future this would be prime real estate inside Beijing's 5th Ring Road, 40,000 yuan per square meter. The villages around here had decent land and water, but no amount of good harvests could overcome bad policy. This past year, one order after another had run people ragged, and the crops suffered for it. People didn't realize that late 1958 was just the beginning of the hunger. Over the next 3 years, hundreds of thousands in the north would starve to death. When I got close to the village, I pulled the cornmeal sack out of my space and threw it on my shoulder. Couldn't let anyone see things appearing out of thin air. I spotted chimney smoke in the distance and picked up my pace. I was going to see Grandpa and Grandma again, the two people who loved me most in the world. At the village entrance, kids playing on the ice ran over calling me Little Grandpa and Great Grandpa. One snotty-nosed kid called me Uncle. That was the perk of coming back to the village. My generation rank was ridiculously high. Not because of me, but because of my grandpa, Chin Gooden. He was the highest-ranking elder in the village, matched only by his seventh brother Chin Goshing, the clan patriarch who was in his 70s or 80s and ran everything. The village chief, Chin Chingrong, was his son. Then another pack of kids came running out, led by my little demon brother Erbau. He was 7, the age where even dogs find you annoying. He was famous at home and school for being wild. Mom had joked countless times that she should have strangled him at birth. I straightened his hat. Steam was rising from under it, meaning he'd been running like crazy. Strange how these kids had so much energy when they could barely fill their stomachs. 2 men in worn padded jackets shuffled over slowly. Everyone moved carefully now. 2 meals a day of thin porridge meant you couldn't waste energy. They greeted me casually by name, so I glared at them and told them to call me Uncle. They were Chin Zihue and Chin Zijuan, brothers, technically my nephews, even though they were in their 30s with kids nearly old enough to marry. They didn't dare disrespect me. Everyone knew I was Grandpa and Grandma's favorite. Cross me and the old couple would stand in the middle of the street cursing you for 2 hours straight, and you'd have to smile through it. They told me the village had formed a militia platoon. Weapons had been distributed: Hanyang rifles, M1 Garands, Type 38 Arisakas, and even 2 crooked-handle machine guns. My hands itched hearing that. In my past life, I'd handled firearms for decades as part of my job. I decided to borrow a Garand from village chief Chingrong later and go hunting in the mountains to get some meat for the family. They also told me about Erbau's latest crimes. He'd pulled the whiskers off the clan patriarch's old cat, thrown a neighbor's dog into an ice hole, and gotten into a war with their family goose. The goose now ran away every time it saw him. I laughed. That was my brother all right. He didn't calm down until years later when he went to the countryside as a sent-down youth. I sent Erbau off to play and walked through the village toward the west end where Grandpa and Grandma lived, a bit apart from everyone else, up against the mountain with a view of the whole village below. After Grandpa's youngest son got married, the old couple had divided everything among their 3 sons and now lived alone. Dad was the eldest, and our whole family had city registration. The second and third uncles, Qingfu and Qingue, had their own households. Just the 2 old folks at the old house now, nice and quiet. Grandpa and Grandma had always loved me the most out of all the grandchildren. They just never had much to offer. In my previous life, they worried themselves sick over their children and grandchildren, and both passed away in 1968. About 100 meters from the old house, second Uncle Qingfu and third Uncle Qingue each had their own places, 3 rooms of mud brick houses. They were good sons and took care of the old couple after our family moved to the city. 2 kids came running out of second uncle's yard shouting, "Big brother!" The twins, Chin Dajuan and Chin Daquan, 12 years old. I kicked them each once and told them to go put on their hats before coming back out. They were small for 12, clearly malnourished. These cousins, along with the girls from both uncles' families, were all very close to me. I thought about the black soil in my space. If I could grow grain in there, I could at least keep my family fed. I pushed open Grandpa's gate and walked slowly through the yard, taking everything in. The door swung open and Grandpa came out in a burst of warm air. The moment he saw me, he yelled for Grandma. She poked her head through the window, beaming. I set down the cornmeal sack inside. Grandma pulled me onto the warm part of the brick bed and said I shouldn't have brought anything. Nobody in Chinja village would dare let her grandson go hungry. She had a point. Every single person in the village was surnamed Chin, not one outsider. Clan seniority mattered more than law here, and since Grandpa was one of the highest-ranking elders, nobody would ever shortchange him or Grandma on food. I held Grandma's arm and felt a warmth I hadn't known in decades. I told her to just eat the cornmeal. The city wouldn't let us starve. Then Grandpa sighed and told me what had happened. The harvest season should have been fine. The weather was good this year. But the steel smelting campaign pulled all the young workers away to the reservoir. and there was nobody left to bring in the crops. Village Chief Qingrong managed to sneak a dozen men back, and they saved about half the grain. But after turning in the mandatory quota, almost nothing was left. Grandma said not to listen to him complain too much. Things were still better than during the Japanese occupation. Qingrong had offered to send them extra grain, but they'd refused. They couldn't bear to eat well when the rest of the village was staggering from hunger. I went quiet. The situation was worse than I'd imagined, and I had a treasure trove in my space, but no way to use it yet. Grandma changed the subject and teased me about marriage. Gooden was a year younger than me and already getting engaged in 2 days. When was I going to bring home a wife? I blushed. 2 lifetimes of being single. Every girl I'd ever gotten close to had backed off once they heard about my family situation. I promised her I'd find a wife once I got a job, and we'd have kids for them to look after. The old couple's eyes crinkled with joy. Second Uncle Qingfu and second aunt came in, with my cousin Qin Tsuitsue behind them. Tsuitsue was almost 17 and had been my little shadow since we were kids. She grabbed my sleeve and started chattering nonstop. I asked second uncle if there were any grain and vegetable seeds available. He said they were all stored in the village warehouse and told me to ask village chief Qingrong for some. Just a few seeds was nothing worth worrying about. Then I brought up what I really wanted: borrowing a gun from the militia to hunt pheasants near the mountain. Second uncle said Daju managed the weapons and it was easy enough to borrow one, but warned me not to go deep into the mountain. Wild boars were everywhere this year, thick-skinned beasts covered in a layer of grit like armor. Regular bullets couldn't even penetrate them. Between the tusks and the charging, they were deadlier than bears or wolves. I wasn't worried. In my previous life, my job mostly involved drinking tea and reading newspapers and target practice. I'd fired countless rounds over the decades. My marksmanship rivaled the best shooters in any military district, and with my space as a backup, no animal scared me. Second uncle was reluctant to help me borrow the gun, afraid I'd disobey and go into the mountains. But Grandpa spoke up, told him to take me to the village office and say he'd given permission. A young man needed to see the world, and I'd just be at the mountain's edge. Second uncle never argued with Grandpa. He grabbed his hat, and we headed to the village office. A row of 7 mud brick rooms at the east end of the village, 2 warehouses and 5 offices. Inside, 3 men were squatting around a red-hot stove smoking hand-rolled cigarettes with gloomy faces. Village Chief Qingrong, the village accountant Qin Degui, and militia platoon leader Qin Dezhu. One was my uncle, the other 2 were technically my nephews in clan ranking. Qingrong immediately offered to go scoop some corn from the warehouse for Grandpa, thinking we'd come because the old folks were running out of food. Second uncle waved him off and said I was here to see Dezhu. I told Dezhu I wanted to borrow a rifle and try my luck hunting pheasant and rabbit at the edge of the mountain. He looked skeptical and asked if I'd ever fired a gun before. He'd been a soldier and had a bit of swagger about it. I smiled and lied. Told him my school had organized shooting training over summer break, and I'd fired over 100 rounds. Nobody could check anyway. He bought it and said he'd give me an M1 Garand, better than the Type 38 Arasaka. Daju found me a decent M1 Garand from the armory and handed over a few dozen rounds. I field-stripped the rifle, checked the barrel, snapped it back together, and loaded it. Daju washed my hands and relaxed. He could tell I knew what I was doing. I also got some seeds from the village chief, a handful each of corn, rice, and wheat, plus a dozen cucumber and tomato seeds. I wanted to test whether I could grow crops inside my space. I was 90% sure it would work, but I needed to try it for real. Back at Grandpa's house, second aunt had made lunch, a few corn buns and half a pot of wild vegetable and bran porridge. Enough to not die, not enough to feel full. I watched Grandpa and Grandma drink only half a bowl each and pour the rest for Erbau and the twins. They didn't touch a single corn bun. It cut me like a knife. I swore to myself that no matter what, I would make sure my family ate. Third uncle's family didn't even come over. He was too embarrassed to eat his parents' food. Winter nights come early up north. We talked a bit and went to bed. Erbau was out cold the second he lay down, but I couldn't sleep. The blankets were crawling with lice and fleas. I tossed and scratched half the night before finally drifting off. At dawn I got up, ate 2 corn cakes Grandma had made specially for me, a luxury nobody else dared waste grain on, and tucked 2 more, in my jacket, actually into my space. Then I grabbed the rifle and headed out. Light snow was falling. In the city, the snow hadn't seemed like much, but out here it came up to my calves. I trudged into the mountains. Forget hunting pheasants at the edge. I was going deep. I wanted wild boar. Meat to eat and meat to sell. It was bitterly cold, so I stored the gun in my space to keep the bolt from freezing. I tested pulling it out with just a thought. The rifle appeared instantly in my hands, faster than unslinging it from my back. After 2 hours of hiking, the trees thickened and patches of green appeared under thinner snow. My stamina was good thanks to half a year of Beijing training with a master who said I had talent but had started too late. Since being reborn, I'd been drinking only well water from the space, and my body felt remade. Sharper hearing, better eyesight, more strength. I hadn't measured how much, but everything felt different. 3 hours in, I was deep in the mountains, dead silent except for distant wolf howls. I sat on a fallen tree and chewed a corn cake. Then I heard it, a grunting sound. I followed it and found 5 wild boars rooting in a hollow. A big male easily over 300 pounds, a female around 250, and 3 young ones at 60 or 70 pounds each. They'd fattened up all autumn. I willed the garand into my hands. The big male sensed something and lifted his head. Before he could react, I put a bullet through his left eye. His brain turned to mush, and he dropped. I emptied the clip in rapid fire, and the rest went down before they'd taken 2 steps. I reloaded, walked down into the hollow, gave each one a finishing shot, and stored all 5 in my space. A low growl came from behind me. I spun and fired. A wolf, its head blown apart. Sneaky bastard. My hearing was incredible now. I could practically hear mosquitoes fighting at 100 meters. I left the wolf carcass where it fell and climbed up the slope with my rifle ready. A dead wolf makes perfect bait. Sure enough, within 20 minutes 5 more wolves crept in to feed on their packmate. Their fur was still sleek and glossy. In another month of starvation, it would be dry and worthless. I looked at them and saw wolf skin sleeping mats. Grandpa and Grandma's joints were bad with rheumatism, and wolf hide is warm. Every family member could have one. I aimed at the biggest one, the pack leader, gray-white fur, perfect for Nuni's bed. It didn't know it was prey. I fired. The leader tumbled. For more shots, for more wolves down. Every bullet hit its mark. Not a single one fought back. That felt pretty good. I was humming a tune as I went down to collect the carcasses when a leopard launched itself off the opposite slope. 100 meters closed almost instantly. I snapped off 2 shots. It dodged both. The third hit its front leg. It stumbled and rolled, but charged again, wounded and furious. I barely had time to sidestep into my space. The leopard bit nothing but dirt. While it was confused, I popped back out. It turned its head, and I shoved the Garand barrel straight into its open mouth. I pulled the trigger and dumped all 8 rounds into its skull. The leopard whimpered once and collapsed. I was happy when I got that leopard skin, not a single scratch on it, worth thousands if I found the right buyer. I went into my space feeling tired and hungry. Corn cakes fill you up fast, but don't last long. Inside the courtyard, I had quite the haul already. 5 wild boars, 5 wolves, and 1 leopard. I was worried about skinning them without a knife, but then I just thought about it, and boom, everything got butchered automatically. The skins hung themselves up in the east wing. The meat appeared in the kitchen. Turns out, in this space, I just have to think something and it happens. I ran outside to the field with my seeds, flipped over about 10 acres of land with a single thought, scattered the seeds, and poured some water. The moment the water hit the soil, green sprouts shot up and grew right before my eyes. I was thrilled. Back in the courtyard, I roasted a big chunk of roe deer meat over a fire. No seasoning, but when you're starving, everything tastes amazing. After eating, I took a cold shower. This new body had 6-pack abs, felt pretty good. I didn't dare wash my clothes since I had nothing to change into, so I just put the dirty ones back on. I napped on the steps for a bit and thought about how I needed a bed in here, and a whole lot of other things. I needed to make money fast. When I stepped out of the space, I came face to face with a wolf, less than a meter away. We stared at each other for 3 seconds, eyes wide. I screamed and flashed back into the space. I didn't see it, but that wolf turned and bolted too. We scared each other half to death. After a while, I poked my head out with my rifle ready. The snow was empty except for a silly roe deer about 80 meters away, just wandering around, wiggling its little white tail tuft and staring at me with big, curious eyes. wondering what I was. One shot, and it dropped. I whistled and waved the kill into my space, then spun around and fired 3 quick shots. A wolf had been sneaking up behind me at 50 meters. Dropped it cold. Nobody messes with me within 100 meters. I kept going deeper into the mountains. I flushed out 2 hares, nice and fat. Shot them both. My little sister loves braised rabbit. Then I spotted a huge dead tree, thick as 3 men hugging it, with a hole carved out and icicles hanging from the entrance. Definitely a hibernating bear inside, breathing out all that moisture. I climbed up top, stuck my barrel in, and fired 5 shots. Then I jumped down and ran. The ground shook. Snow fell from the trees. A massive roar echoed out. The dead tree split in half, and a huge brown bear staggered out, roaring at the sky. But I could see it was stumbling. My shots had done real damage. It swung its paws around, snapping small trees like twigs, but it was getting slower and weaker. A hibernating bear woken up is already sluggish. Wounded, it was even clumsier. I hid behind a tree, took aim, and put 3 bullets into its eyes and mouth. The bear swayed and crashed to the ground. I rushed over, pulled it into my space, and immediately used my mind to remove the gallbladder before the bile could leak. It was a bronze-quality gallbladder, over 200 grams. I skinned the bear, the hide spread out to about 3 meters, perfect for my bed. But what I really wanted were the paws. This bear weighed over 1,000 gene. The front paws were thick and fat. I know from my past life that the left front paw is the best one. Bears lick their front paws during hibernation until the calluses wear thin and the flesh turns tender. And since bears are left-handed, they grab food with the left paw. It's always soaked in fruit juice, and eggs, honey, and blood from years of eating. That makes the left paw the most delicious. By afternoon, I headed back. Along the way, I ran into a herd of wild boars and bagged 2 big ones. I was almost out of bullets, so I called it a day. Walking home, I felt so happy thinking about my family's faces when they'd see all this meat, picturing my little brother and sister eating well. My blood was boiling with excitement. When I saw the village in the distance, smoke curling from the chimneys in the fading light, everything looked peaceful and beautiful, except for the poverty and hunger. I broke off some big tree branches and pulled out the 2 boars, propping them up so it wouldn't look suspicious. I couldn't let anyone find out about my space. Then I ran down the ridge to get help carrying them home. When I got back, the whole family was worried sick. Mom had been anxious all day. Grandma kept blaming Grandpa and second uncle for letting me go hunting. My little sister Nano was crying, and even my mischievous little brother Erbau was sitting quietly in Grandpa's lap. They were about to send a search party. The second mom saw me. She grabbed a broom and started whacking me. I dodged around yelling, "Mom, Al, stop. Dad, get second uncle and old uncle. Grab the cart. I got 2 wild boars up there. They're too heavy. I need help bringing them back. Mom, at least let me finish talking before you hit me." When I told everyone I'd shot 2 wild boars, the whole family froze. Grandpa was the first to speak. "Daping, what did you say?" "2 wild boars." Grandma grabbed me, checking if I was hurt. Mom came closer too, still holding her broom. I rubbed my sore arm and hid behind Grandma. "I'm fine. I just dragged them all day and I'm exhausted." I came back to get help carrying them, but Mom started beating me before I could even explain. Dad jumped off the Kong and started putting on his shoes, ready to go. But Grandpa stopped him. "Wait, listen to what Daping has to say." I smiled. Grandpa always understood me. I told them we couldn't keep both boars for ourselves. The whole village was out of food. If we stuffed our faces while our neighbors went hungry, we'd never be able to show our faces in this village again. That's just how I am. Always has been. Third uncle threw a fit. Who cares about them? Everyone for themselves. He's always been like that, selfish and short-sighted. If it weren't for the bit of respect he shows Grandpa and Grandma, I wouldn't bother with him at all. Grandma looked at me with a warm smile and said I was right. She told second uncle to go find village chief Chingrong and get people to bring the boars back and share the meat with everyone. Grandpa smacked third uncle and told him to shut up. Dad agreed too, and second uncle ran off to get help. By then my stomach was growling badly. Thank goodness I'd eaten some roasted meat in my space earlier, or I wouldn't have lasted this long. Mom heated up food for me, corn cakes and cabbage soup. I was so hungry it tasted amazing. Little Nano toddled over with her arms out. "Brother, hold me." I picked her up and she buried her face in my shoulder. "Brother, I want meat," she whispered. "I'll make you some soon," I promised. Erbau heard that and tried to sneak out to see the excitement, but Dad grabbed him by the collar and tossed him back onto the Kong. Village Chief Chingrong came in, excited, and asked me to tell him everything. I told him casually that the two boars together were probably over 500 gene. The whole room went silent. Then everyone scrambled to get moving. 5 or 6 of us went up the mountain with torches. When we pulled back the branches and revealed those 2 huge boars, everyone was stunned again. Daju, the army veteran, crouched down to examine them and praised my shooting. Every bullet had hit the eyes, nose, or mouth. I just laughed and said I got lucky. Chief Chingrong suggested we keep 1 boar for our family and give the other to the village. Third uncle jumped in immediately. "Yes, that works." Dad kicked him and told him to get lost. I told the chief to give both boars to the village, save them for New Year's, so every family could at least have dumplings. The chief's eyes filled with tears. He'd been losing sleep for months watching the grain supplies shrink. There was only enough food for 2 more months, and wild vegetables wouldn't grow for another 4. These 2 fat boars meant the world to him. He grabbed Dad's hand and couldn't speak for a long time. On the way down, I hung back until everyone forgot about me. Then I quietly pulled a young boar from my space, about 70 or 80 gene. This one was for Grandpa and Grandma. When I snuck it home, the family was overjoyed. That much pork would last us past the first month of the new year. Dad wasn't perfectly selfless either. When I'd whispered to him about the extra boar, he hurried home right away. Nobody's completely unselfish. It's just a matter of degree. At the village square, they lit bonfires and banged gongs. People poured out of their houses wondering what was happening. The accountant organized the butchering. They pulled out 5 big iron pots left over from the communal kitchen days, 2 for steaming sorghum rice, 3 for stewing pork with sauerkraut. They couldn't make blood sausage since the blood had already clotted, so the stew felt like it was missing its soul. Adults bustled around happily. Kids chased each other around the yard. Nobody had eaten meat in so long. It felt like New Year's had come early. After removing the heads, hooves, and organs, the 2 boars yielded over 400 gene of rich fatty pork. That night, the whole village of Kinjaigu came alive, and for the first time in a long while, people felt like there was something to look forward to. I wrapped Nyonya in my coat with just her little head poking out, and we stood on the millstone watching the whole village celebrate in the yard. It felt like New Year's. Since the village is one big clan, most people here are technically my juniors. They all came over to thank me for the boars, calling me 13th uncle, 13th grandpa, 13th great-grandpa. I almost ascended to heaven with all those titles. I grabbed Nyonya and got out of there fast. Daju brought over our share of the pork stew and sorghum rice. Looking at that bowl of thick fatty pork slices, I honestly couldn't stomach it. Way too greasy. But then I watched my family devour it. Little Nyonya grabbed a big piece of fat with both tiny hands, biting down with all her strength. My 3 younger girl cousins were wolfing it down too, and Erbau and the others were even worse. That night, everyone except Grandpa, Grandma, and me got diarrhea. Their stomachs hadn't seen grease in so long that it hit them hard. I spent the whole night taking care of Nyonya, then ran to the township clinic to buy medicine. After they took it, things finally settled down. The next day was my nephew Gooden's engagement. In the countryside, an engagement is basically everything except the wedding banquet and the wedding night. The 2 families meet and settle things. Gooden's father, Chindadi, died 11 years ago protecting my dad from enemies, leaving behind a widow with 2 kids. So Dad had to come back to help with Gooden's marriage. I already knew this engagement was going to fall apart. Not only would it fail, it would nearly cause a disaster. I wanted to warn everyone, but who'd listen to a kid? I could only wait and see. Nyonya was still weak from last night. No energy at all, her little head resting limp on my shoulder. I tucked her into bed, kissed her cheek, grabbed my rifle, and told Mom I was going to the woods to shoot a rabbit so I could make soup for my sister. Mom hesitated. She'd noticed something different about me since I nearly drowned, like I'd suddenly grown up, more steady, more confident. She let me go but warned me that if I dared go deep into the mountains again, she'd break my leg. I agreed quickly. I'd only been reborn 2 days and already gotten 2 beatings. I wasn't about to test her limits. By the time I came back down with 2 rabbits and a pheasant, The village was in chaos. I knew what had happened, so I didn't bother going to watch. Only Grandma and Nyonya were home. I kissed my sister and got to work making chicken soup. The winter pheasant was skinny, barely a gene after plucking and cleaning. But I can cook. I learned in my past life to take care of my sister. Just as I put the chicken in the pot, Mom and my two aunts came back chattering and fuming. To me, they were just enjoying the drama, but that's how northern winters go. Gossip is how you pass the time. Mom was shocked to see me cooking. In her memory, all I ever did was eat and study. She almost thought I'd been switched with someone else. The three women told Grandma what happened with Gooden's engagement. Just as I expected, the bride's family suddenly demanded an extra 20 jin of cornmeal on top of the 10 jin and 5 yuan already agreed upon. When Gooden's mom begged them, they wouldn't budge. The bride's brother insisted, and when Gooden got desperate and fought back, the brother cracked his head open. Blood everywhere. Grandma was furious. Village Chief Qingrong got angry too and had Daju detain the guy who threw the punch. Either give an explanation or get sent to the commune authorities. I understood the bride's family's angle. They saw our village was doing okay, and they had a son who also needed a bride. So they tried to squeeze more out of Gooden's family to cover their own son's bride price. It's not unheard of, but changing the deal right before the wedding is just disrespectful. 30 jin of cornmeal was worth 50 or 60 yuan on the black market. That's a huge amount for a rural bride price these days. This engagement was dead now. Once fists start flying, it's over. Even if they patched it up, the bad feelings would never go away. Dad came home soon after. He only had 2 days off from the factory and had no time for this mess. I was anxious to get back too. I needed to sell the wild game from my space at the black market. A reborn man with a cheat system being broke? That'd be embarrassing. We left Erbau at the village. He had too many playmates and didn't want to leave. Grandpa and Grandma held Nyonya and clung to me, not wanting to let us go. Dad was used to it. Grandkids always beat sons. We walked 6 or 7 li in the freezing wind to catch the bus. I wrapped Nyonya tight against my chest. I'd rather freeze than let her get cold. Waiting for that bus was torture, stamping my feet, snot freezing into icicles on my face, until it finally rattled up. It was rush hour. I held Nyonya while Dad shielded Mom, and we squeezed through the packed crowd until we finally made it home. Back in our little side room, lying on the warm Kong with my legs stretched out, I couldn't help groaning. It felt so good. I slipped into my space and got a wonderful surprise. In just a dozen hours, the crops and vegetables were already tall. I grew up farming until I was 10, so I know what I'm looking at. 2 more days, and I'd have a harvest. I was so excited I could barely sleep. But I forced myself to nap because later tonight I had to go to the black market to sell the wild boar meat. We were too poor. This was my only way to make money. I came out of the space and drifted off to sleep. I woke up at 3 in the morning, jumped off the Kong, got dressed, and grabbed the basket I'd prepared. I listened at the bedroom door. Dad was snoring loud enough to shake the walls. Good. I quietly unlatched the door and slipped out. Northern winters mean short days and long nights. The sun doesn't come up until past 6, and right now it was pitch black. The black market closes at 6:30 when it gets light, so I had enough time. I tiptoed through the courtyard. Passing by the Du family's window, I heard some muffled sounds. I cursed under my breath. It's 3 in the morning and Xiao Du is already exercising with his wife? No wonder they pop out kids like chickens laying eggs. I eased the courtyard gate open and slipped out. The morning air was crisp but mixed with a faint stink. Beijing's air wasn't great. Millions of people crammed together, plus garbage, and maybe 2 public toilets per alley. Kids pee against the walls and mix it with mud. What do you expect it to smell like? I hadn't gone 100 meters when I spotted a woman sneaking along ahead of me, hunched over with a scarf on her head and a basket on her arm. She looked exactly like a Japanese soldier sneaking around to steal landmines. I almost doubled over laughing because I recognized those clothes immediately. Half blue, half floral print, patches on patches, 2 shirts sewn into one. That had to be Sha Chun. I crept up and slapped her on the back. She screamed and swung a fist at me. I dodged just in time, remembering she'd trained in martial arts for 3 years as a kid. Her name was Zhao Suchuan, my elementary school classmate. Everyone called her Sha Chun, meaning silly spring. We were best buddies. She was 17 or 18, big-browed and bright-eyed, but she moved and acted more like a clumsy boy than a girl. Her dad was Zhao Yuqiu, a former underground party leader who became the director of the No. 2 steel rolling mill after liberation. "It's me," I whispered. "You little sneak," she said. "Excuse me? You're the one dressed like a Japanese spy, and you're calling me sneaky." She was about to burst out laughing, but I clamped my hand over her mouth. If she let loose with that voice at this hour, she'd wake up the whole neighborhood, and our early morning trip would be ruined. She told me she was going to buy eggs and a chicken for her mom, who didn't have enough milk for the baby. She wanted to make chicken soup. I said I was going to buy some things too, and we should split up and enter quietly. Sneak into the village, no gunfire. That's the rule for the black market. You don't go in groups, or people will think you're undercover cops. She headed toward the market near Zushiku, and I went to the one near Dongwenyan Temple. I started running because time was tight. I really wished I had a bicycle, but even with money you couldn't buy one without a bicycle ticket. Ever since the rationing system started, everything was scarce, especially the 3 rounds in 1 sound: bicycle, watch, sewing machine, and radio. You needed ration tickets plus industrial coupons, and each work unit only handed out 1 or 2 coupons a month. So ticket scalpers popped up on the black market. Where did all those extra tickets come from? Obviously not from regular people who could barely feed themselves. My body felt stronger every day since the space transformed it. Today I'd accidentally snapped a piece of firewood in half just by squeezing it. I ran the whole way in about 30 minutes. The black market was set up inside a 2-courtyard compound. Most markets operated in narrow alleys, but this one boldly ran out of a proper house. What I didn't know was that the place had secret tunnels and hidden rooms. If the authorities ever raided, the organizers would escape through the tunnels and leave the buyers and sellers to fend for themselves. I put 10 jean of pork and a pig's head in my basket, pulled my dog fur hat low, and wrapped a scarf around my face. It was stuffy, but everyone here had to cover up. You couldn't let anyone recognize you. Walking down the alley to the entrance, I passed a dozen tough-looking men leaning against the walls, the boss's muscle. They carried knives and hatchets and wouldn't hesitate to use them. Every black market had a powerful backer. They glanced at me, but didn't say anything. At the black gate, a bony hand like a chicken claw reached out. A raspy voice asked, "Buying or selling?" A messy-haired head poked through the crack, looked at my basket, and said, 20 cents. I paid and squeezed through the gap in the door. Inside, the courtyard was full of shadowy figures. Dawn was just barely breaking. Anyone with a flashlight quickly shut it off. Flashlights were treasures, and batteries were expensive. That old comedy skit about a family's only electrical appliance being a flashlight? That was real life, not a joke. I didn't rush to sell. I walked around first to check grain prices, so I'd know what to do once my space crops were ready. Grain was always hard currency. The famine was just starting, so some people were still selling. I saw cornmeal, millet, and sorghum rice, plus some soybeans and mung beans. No white rice or wheat flour anywhere. Whenever the grain shop got any, it sold out in 2 hours. Cornmeal was 4 mao per jean with a ration ticket, 6 mao 7 without one. Corn flour was 7 mao 8 without a ticket. At the state grain shop, cornmeal was only 1 mao 2 and corn flour 2 mao 6, so black market prices were triple. Fine grain. Forget about it. Everyone here had their faces wrapped tight, hats pulled low, voices disguised. Unless you knew someone really well, you couldn't tell who was who. Halfway through my stroll, I came across someone selling guns. I wasn't surprised at all. The war had ended less than 10 years ago, and who knows how many weapons were still floating around. In later decades, guns would be treated like the plague, but in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, especially in the countryside, every village had 8 or 10 guns stashed away. The militia armories had even more, sometimes including machine guns and mortars. In my past life, I worked in the firearms department, so when I spotted some guns laid out on the ground, I got interested. But crouching down to check them, I was disappointed. 2 old Hanyang rifles with the barrel grooves almost worn smooth, and a mirror-finish box pistol with its front sight filed off, an old guerrilla trick for faster drawing. That pistol was at least as old as me, covered in rust spots. Probably wouldn't even fire. I walked around the whole market and noticed nobody was selling pork. I went back to the gate and waved over the messy-haired doorman. "What do you want?" he rasped with a slight Tianjin accent. "I want to talk business with your boss." He scratched his head. "You've got maybe 50 or 60 jean in that basket, and you want to see the boss." Are you crazy? You're the crazy one, I snapped. 2 wild boars, 500 gene total. Can you handle that? He didn't believe me. I didn't waste any more words and walked back inside. I'd wanted to sell everything in one go at a discount, but since this guy looked down on me, I decided to just sell the meat myself in small pieces. As dawn crept in, more people showed up. I used my mind to cut 50 more gene of meat inside my space, added it to the 10 I already had, sliced it all into 5 gene blocks, and stacked them in my basket. The moment buyers spotted meat, they swarmed me, whispering excitedly. Good meat, nice and fatty. How much? I hadn't seen anyone else selling pork, so I didn't know the going rate. I set my own price, 1 yuan 20 with a ration ticket, 1 yuan 50 without. 5 gene per piece, full weight. People went wild. On the black market, pork with a ticket was already 1 yuan 80. My price was a steal. Everyone wanted some. In less than 5 minutes, all 60 gene were gone. Even the pig head sold for 20 yuan. Total, 110 yuan. Not bad. I was about to leave when the doorman came back with a man in a leather coat and fur hat, the boss. The boss cupped his fists politely. Friend, I'm sorry about my man. He's a bit rough. Don't hold it against him. I nodded coldly. I hear you have 2 wild boars. I'll take them all at 150 per gene. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to deal with these people, but I couldn't turn down good money. Just under 500 gene left, I said. I'll take it all. Bring your scale and follow me. I walked ahead. What I didn't notice was that behind the boss and his 2 men carrying the scale, the doorman quietly waved over 2 more guys to follow us from a distance. I turned a corner, made sure nobody could see, and pulled out 1 whole boar and 2/3 of another from my space. When the boss caught up and saw those massive hogs, fat layer 4 fingers thick, his eyes lit up. Impressive, friend. You've got guts hunting boars this big. He gave me a thumbs up. No choice, I shrugged. Almost starving to death. Had to risk it. His men weighed the meat quickly. Boss, for 165 gene total. 697 yuan 50. The boss peeled off bills from a thick wad. Let's round it up. Here's 700. Bring me anything good you get, and I'll always pay fair. I pocketed the money with a big smile. Deal. I'll come to you first. I turned and walked away. Behind me, the boss smiled coldly and whispered to the doorman. Get the money back. Keep it clean. The doorman took 2 men and followed me. I'd already moved the cash into my space. Then I heard fast footsteps behind me. I ducked into an alley and flashed into my space instantly. Watching from inside, I saw 3 men rush into the alley, all masked up. One of them flipped a knife in his hand. Little punk moves fast. Search everywhere. He's hiding somewhere. I recognized that raspy voice, the doorman. I laughed coldly. This trick was all too familiar. Rob the cellar after the deal. These people had definitely done this before. But it was a dead-end alley. Nowhere to hide unless you climbed a wall into someone's courtyard. They didn't have the nerve to do that. After a few minutes of looking, they left frustrated. I came out of my space and followed them. I wasn't the type to take a punch and swallow it quietly. They went around to the back door of the black market compound. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. My hearing was sharp enough now to catch the yelling inside. Useless. You're all useless. Can't even catch one kid. Sounds of bodies hitting the floor and begging. I climbed over the wall, curled up small, and dropped down silently into the back courtyard. 2 rows of side rooms. Only one with a light on and lots of noise. Sounded like quite a few people inside. I crept forward and discovered a huge warehouse in the back, packed full of goods. I pressed against the wall and tried using my mental power to sweep everything into my space. In the blink of an eye, the entire warehouse was empty. I checked inside my space. It was all grain. I searched around for anything else, but couldn't find more and didn't have time to look carefully, so I kept moving forward. I calmed my mind and discovered my spiritual power could spread out like liquid mercury, letting me see everything it touched, clear as day. What I found blew my mind. Above ground there was just one warehouse, but underground were 3 secret rooms, all built with stone blocks, each about 50 or 60 square meters. The first room had over a dozen tall sandalwood chests, 2 burlap sacks, and 2 black leather bags. The second was packed with bicycles, radios, and sewing machines, dozens of each. The third had about a dozen long wooden crates. I didn't know what was inside those. I didn't think twice. I swept everything into my space, then jumped over the wall and ran. Once I was sure nobody saw me, I wiped the cold sweat off my forehead. Being a thief isn't easy. You need strong nerves for this kind of work. Dawn was breaking. The streets were empty. People used to come out for morning exercise, but with empty stomachs, nobody had the energy. Better to stay home and move as little as possible so you don't get hungry faster. I made it home. Mom and Dad were still snoring. I locked my door and dove into the space. The courtyard side rooms were stacked with grain sacks. I opened a few. Rice, white flour, cornmeal. Roughly 1 ton of rice, a bit less white flour, and about 2 tons of cornmeal. So much for everyone going hungry. Turns out, not enough food. Only applies to regular people without connections. The powerful ones had more than they could ever eat. But I knew what was coming. The man-made famine was about to hit hard. The Great Leap Forward would hurt cities less since urban people had ration quotas, but the countryside would be devastated. Officials were already shouting slogans like 10,000 gene per acre, and the result was farmers having to hand over almost all their grain as public quota, keeping barely anything. As farmers said, during famine we starve, during harvest we still starve. Next year, when relief grain ran out, people would strip the fields of wild vegetables and even eat tree leaves bare. Then people would start dying. I'm no saint. I don't know why I was reborn, but I can only help others after I've protected my own family first. I wasn't sent back to play God. I opened the sandalwood chests. 2 were full of gold bars, different sizes, clearly collected from many families. The small ones weighed 10 liang each, the big ones 16 liang. About a dozen chests held antiques and calligraphy scrolls. The antiques were mostly Ming Dynasty. The paintings were nicer, 2 genuine Tang Bohu originals and 3 pieces of Wenzhong Ming calligraphy. I liked those, but had no time to look through everything now. Antiques wouldn't be worth real money for another 30 years anyway. In troubled times, you store gold. Right now, you store grain. You can't eat paintings. When I emptied the 2 burlap sacks and leather bags, I nearly lost my mind with joy. The sacks were stuffed with cash, mostly 50-cent and 1 yuan bills, but also 2 stacks of Dahei Shi, the 10 yuan notes printed in 1953 and released just last December. These were the rarest bills of the second series. In the future, a single one would sell for 300,000 yuan. The leather bags were full of ration tickets and food coupons of every kind. This was pure gold in this era. You needed grain tickets to buy a fried dough stick, meat tickets for a pork bun. Now I could take my brother and sister to buy anyufang for roast duck or donglishun for hot pot. For the next 30 years, ration tickets would matter more than money. Without tickets, you could starve to death no matter how rich you were. I sat cross-legged and counted the cash. It took over an hour and my hands cramped. Total, 58,300 and some. An enormous fortune. You could add up every family's savings in our entire courtyard and it wouldn't come close to 50,000. I let out a long breath. One night of robbing the robbers, and I'd achieved financial freedom. The perks of rebirth were truly wonderful. I could raise my siblings properly, ease my parents' burden, and eventually find a sweet, gentle wife. Life was beautiful. I also counted 28 bicycles, 17 radios, 25 sewing machines, 3 sacks of cotton, and over 100 bolts of plain fabric. Everything was in short supply except meat, and I already had plenty of that. I couldn't help laughing like a pig. In 2 lifetimes combined, I'd never been this happy. Then I opened those long wooden crates, and my heart skipped. 3 crates of rifles, 1 crate of Browning pistols, 2 crates of stick grenades, and the rest were all ammunition. I know guns inside and out. In my past life, I managed a small armory at the city bureau. I pulled out a rifle, a Garand M1 semi-automatic, effective range 400 meters, 8-round clip. People called it the Big 8 grain. My expression turned serious. 3 crates of 10 rifles each, all brand new, still coated in grease. How did a black market boss get his hands on this much military hardware? A few used rifles and pistols floating around from the war would be normal, but new weapons? That was suspicious. Even so, there was nothing I could do about it right now. My real headache was figuring out how to bring things out of my space without making my family suspicious. I stretched, then realized I hadn't found any watches in tonight's haul. But that made sense. The 3 big domestic watch brands, Seagull, Shanghai, and Beijing, had all just started their factories and weren't mass-producing yet. Foreign brands existed, But with the current political mood against foreign goods, you could only buy watches at consignment shops. That got me thinking. Consignment shops were treasure troves, no ration tickets needed. Especially furniture. In the future, rosewood and wangwali would sell for astronomical prices, but right now they were dirt cheap and everywhere. Still, I couldn't just show up at home with money from selling pork at the black market and expect my family to believe me. I needed a better story. I never was one to overthink things. If I can't figure it out today, I'll figure it out tomorrow. I took a bath in the space. In my past life, I was a little bit of a neat freak, and this life was no different. I was sleeping when something tickled my nose. I reached out and pulled Nano into my arms. She giggled and squirmed. I opened my eyes and pinched her little nose. "You little troublemaker. Brother is a big lazy bug," she announced. "Oh, you dare call me lazy?" I started tickling her, and she collapsed into giggles, going limp in my arms. I held her tight and felt a wave of sadness wash over me. "I'll protect you," I whispered. "Never again will I." I couldn't finish the sentence. I asked where Mom was. It felt strange. I hadn't said, "Mom," like that in decades, but it came out so naturally. "Mama washing clothes," Nano said. I got dressed and went outside with my toothbrush. Mom and Annie Nyo were at the water basin washing clothes in the freezing cold. Mom's fingers were red as carrots. "Daping, porridge is in the pot," she said. I went inside, grabbed the hot water thermos, and poured it into her wash basin. She swatted my arm. "That's your water for brushing your teeth." "I don't need it." She was scolding me, but I could hear the warmth in her voice. Auntie Nyo smiled. "This boy changes by the day. Yesterday he was a wild monkey. Today he's all grown up and caring for his mama." Mom's eyes curved into crescent moons. "My Daping is amazing. He shot 2 big wild boars in the countryside the other day, and yesterday he got 2 pheasants to make soup for his little sister." "2 wild boars? Really? You should sell them to the steel mill cafeteria. That'd be worth more than a salary." My eyes lit up. Of course. That was the answer I'd been looking for. A perfectly legitimate way to explain my money. The wisdom of ordinary people is truly endless. I quickly brushed my teeth, splashed my face, and drank half a bowl of corn porridge. Nano sat beside me playing with the pheasant feathers I'd given her yesterday. Girls are so much easier. If Erbau were here, he'd be tearing the house apart. I fed Nano the other half of my porridge. It scratched my throat going down, but she ate it happily. I wiped her mouth. "Nano, what do you want to eat most?" She looked up with bright eyes. "Meat." I squeezed her nose. "Tonight, I'll make sure you get meat." She nodded hard. "Yes." I grabbed my school bag and headed out. Mom yelled after me. "Don't go running around with Daping and those boys. If you don't listen, I'll skin you alive when you get home." "Got it," I called back without turning around. I carried the school bag as cover. I needed something to pull things out of my space without looking suspicious. Walking down Gulu Street with my hands in my pockets, I thought about what Annie Nyo said. I could sell the wild boar and wolf meat to the steel mill. He Zhu, everyone called him Silly Zhu, was the head chef at the Red Star Steel Mill cafeteria. He lived in Courtyard No. 95. If his cafeteria would buy wild game, I'd finally have a believable source of income. It was past rush hour, but the breakfast shops were still open. The smell of fried food drifted through the door curtains, and my stomach growled. I ducked inside. Beijing breakfast is a real part of Chinese food culture. A few years back, every morning at dawn, old Beijingers would be out savoring their first bite. Now all the breakfast stalls have been turned into state-private partnerships. Same cooks, just government employees earning monthly wages. Despite the food shortage, there was still a decent selection. Buns, fried dough sticks, fried flatbread, jiaochuan crullers, dessert fermented bean drink, tofu pudding, pickled vegetables. A jean of fried dough cost 2 mao 5 plus 8 liang in grain tickets. Plenty of people could afford the money, but those 8 liang of grain tickets could feed a whole family porridge for a day. So few people were willing to spend tickets on breakfast. One thing about that era, everything was full weight, no cheating. If it said 1 jean, the scale tipped generous. It was a state business, and they'd rather the government take a small loss than shortchange the people. The shop was mostly empty. A few workers grabbing fried flatbread on their way to their shift. If you wanted proper stir-fried liver or braised offal, you'd have to go to Qianmen. I ordered a fried flatbread, 2 jiaochuan crullers, and a bowl of dessert. Cost me 3 mao 6 plus 2 liang in grain tickets. Pocket change for me now. I lifted the bowl of duzir. Temperature was perfect. I sipped from the rim, took a bite of pickled kohlrabi, then crunched into a jiaochuan. Crispy, fragrant, and sour all at once. I almost moaned with pleasure. Duzir is the ultimate test of a true Beijinger. If you're not born and raised here, you probably can't handle it. Plenty of outsiders come curious. Take one look at that grayish-green liquid, catch a whiff of its sour stink, and gag before it even touches their lips. But I love this stuff. In later years, the ingredients got impure, and the taste wasn't the same, so I stopped drinking it as much. Coming back to this time, my first real breakfast without duzir would have been a rebirth without a soul. That breakfast nearly made me cry. The taste was incredible. After eating, I bought 10 meat buns. They were actually cabbage and oil residue filling, but old Mr. Du made them thick and generous. Sadly, in a few years when the political storm hits, he'd be labeled a small business owner and sent back to his hometown. No more of his buns after that. I wrapped the hot buns in oil paper, put them in my school bag, and slipped them into my space. These weren't for me. I was going to visit my martial arts master. My master's surname is Tong. He's also the father of my troublemaker friend Tong Daping, the same guy who talked me into winter swimming in my past life, which is how I ended up reborn. Funny how both lifetimes, it was Daping who dragged me into the water. That guy's been my best friend across 2 lives. Master Tong isn't ordinary. His name is Tong Weiniang, a true Manchu bannerman from the plain white banner, clan named Tongjia. He was born just as the Republic replaced the Qing, so his family had already fallen on hard times. But he was obsessed with martial arts from childhood. He's the direct grand disciple of the legendary marksman Li Shuwen, and his Beijing was unbeatable across Beijing and Tianjin. Near his courtyard, I found a quiet spot and pulled out a chunk of pork, over 20 jin, plus 20 jin of rice and 20 jin of white flour from my space. I carried it all into his compound. The Tong family lived in a 2-courtyard house that used to be entirely theirs, until the neighborhood committee moved 5 more families in, turning it into a crowded mess. At least the Tongs still had the back courtyard to themselves, 5 people in their own space. But I knew that during the political storm, 3 more families would be crammed in there too, and the stress and humiliation would eventually kill Master Tong and his wife. The moment I stepped into the front yard, 3 neighborhood aunties spotted the pork and surrounded me like vultures. They started bidding, 1 yuan 20, 1 yuan 30, practically drooling. I snapped at them. Shut up. You want to get arrested? Private trading is illegal. That shut them up fast. They'd been so focused on the meat they forgot that getting caught buying and selling could mean reform classes or even prison. They backed off but glared at me with bitter eyes. I knew these women well. In the future, they and their families would refuse to leave even after the other tenants moved out, squatting in the Tong family's rooms. They were partly responsible for driving my master and his wife to their deaths. I gave them an ice-cold look. In my heart, they were already on a blacklist. Someday I'd find a way to get these 3 families out of Beijing for good. In the back courtyard, my master's wife was hanging laundry. The old-style Manchu robes were long gone, pawned off years ago, replaced by plain black cotton jackets and baggy pants. Shifu's wife? I called out, feeling emotional. She'd always been so kind to me. Daping, why did you bring so much? She exclaimed. Haven't visited in days. We went to the countryside and got a wild boar, so I brought some meat for Dafeng and little Ho-Hot. You're such a good boy, she said warmly. The door curtain lifted and Master Tong stepped out. He was short. Honestly, you could say small, but his body was compact and powerful, radiating a fierce energy. I immediately set everything down, stepped forward, and dropped to one knee in the old Manchu greeting. This tradition had been banned as feudal leftover after liberation, but Master Tong still valued these rituals. Maybe it was the last shred of dignity left to the old bannerman. He laughed heartily. Of his 6 disciples, I had the best talent and instinct, though he always said I'd started training too late for my body to reach its full potential. He reached down to pull me up with one hand, but I didn't budge. He looked surprised. Even at 3/10 of his strength, he should have lifted me easily. He had to push harder before I stood up. I'd been curious to test how much of his force I could resist now. Master Tong was a martial arts fanatic. He never bothered with household matters and left everything to his wife, who earned money doing embroidery and sewing for others. Without her, the family would have starved. That was the old Bannerman weakness. Come, come, he dragged me to the middle of the yard. Let's spar. His wife sighed and shook her head, then struggled inside with the heavy rice, flour, and meat. His little twins Daping and Ho-Hot, just 7 years old, ran out to watch. I knew Master's temper, so I didn't argue. We sparred, and he kept exclaiming in surprise. In just a few days, I'd improved so much that he had to use 70% of his strength. We lost track of time until his wife came out and called us to stop. Even inside, he was still muttering to himself about our sparring. I left him alone, that was just how he was, and chatted with his wife instead, playing with the twins who snuggled up against my legs. Then I realized I hadn't seen Daping. Where's Daping? I asked. He went off to Mintugu yesterday with some friends. Won't be back for a day or two. I shook my head. Same as my past life. That guy only knew how to play. His wife hesitated, then asked about my job situation. I told her I had a lead. I knew the city police bureau would be recruiting after New Year, though the requirements were strict: height, age, education, and especially the political background check. She wanted to ask about Daping, I could tell, but his family background was too problematic to pass any political review. I knew from my past life that Daping would end up without work until 1966, when he'd be sent to the countryside as a youth worker. He and my brother would go to Heilongjiang to do hard labor, not returning until 1978. By then, Master Tong and his wife would be long dead, and I'd be the one raising Daping and Ho-Hot. Don't worry, I told her. I'll do everything I can to help Daping find a real job. She nodded quietly. I stayed a bit longer, then said goodbye. When I went to my master, he just waved me off without looking up, still mumbling. Impossible. How did that kid's body change like that? It doesn't make sense. I held back my laughter and ruffled little Ho-Hot's hair. Of course I couldn't tell him it was because I'd been drinking the spirit well water from my space. After leaving Master Tong's place, I headed straight for the supply cooperative. I knew that with New Year coming, everything would be bought out, and after that the real shortage period would begin. Everything would become scarce. The cooperative on Xianmen Street was actually a department store that used to belong to a family named Liu. Before liberation, they called him Liu Half City because his businesses covered half of Beijing. He owned not just department stores, but even the Red Star Steel Mill. After liberation, he handed everything over. The stores became cooperatives, and the mill became a state-private joint venture. That move saved him from the political campaigns of 1952. Walking in, I noticed the slogans on the wall: "Serve the people," and underneath, a more interesting one: "No hitting or cursing customers." This wasn't a joke. Back then, state-run store clerks were the ones with the attitude. The sign was basically warning customers to behave themselves, be polite to the clerks, don't be picky, or you'd get yelled at. It was like a "beware of dog" sign. The store was pretty big with decent selection. Not many customers around. The clerks were standing in little groups chatting, not interested in helping anyone. But two young girls at one counter looked up when I walked in, and their cheeks turned a little pink. I'm not stunningly handsome, but my features are clean and my skin is fair. The spirit well water and frequent bathing in my space had made my complexion glow in a way nobody in this era had. People probably wanted to pinch my cheeks. The big-eyed girl called out in perfect Beijing dialect, "Comrade, what would you like to buy?" 3 big clay pots, some liquor, and a few packs of cigarettes, I said. We only had one pot at home, and cooking anything was a hassle. Clay pots need industrial coupons. Do you have liquor and cigarette tickets? Sure. 5 industrial coupons, 2 Class A liquor tickets, 3 Class B, and 5 cigarette tickets. I had bags full of every kind of ticket from my haul, but I couldn't pull out too many at once. She listed what was available: Maotai and Shifeng for Class A liquor, Erguo for Class B, Zhonghua and Chongjiu for Class A cigarettes. I'll take Maotai and Zhonghua, I said. 1 bottle of Maotai is 4 yuan, Erguo 1 yuan 20, Zhonghua 96 fun per pack. Want them all? Yep. Hey, are you from the Northeast? She asked. My casual, yep, sounded more northeastern than Beijing. No, my family's from Daping. Oh, her face went red again. I had no idea why mentioning Daping made her blush. She spaced out for a second, so I tapped the counter. Comrade? Comrade, she snapped back and totaled everything up. 18 yuan 50. I thought to myself how cheap everything was. Money really had weighed in this era. I also bought wooden cooking spatulas since all our iron ones had been confiscated during the Great Steel Smelting Campaign. Even the supply store had no iron left except the metal trim on the counters. Every scrap of iron had to be turned in for steelmaking. Political orders, no exceptions. Then I pulled out some sugar tickets. 2 gene of white sugar, 1 gene of white rabbit milk candy, and 1 gene of fruit hard candy. The girl's eyes lit up. Having liquor tickets just meant your family was doing okay, but this many sugar tickets? That proved real wealth. A fair-skinned, clean-looking young man with a well-off family. That's the type girls like in any era. I could practically see her planning our future children in her head. She nudged her friend. Fonger, candy and pastries are your counter. You take over. The other girl, a bit shy, nodded and led me to the pastry section by the door. After I paid, she said quietly, I'm Wang Feng. That one over there is Zhang Kaling. I've been single across 2 lifetimes. I know absolutely nothing about girl signals. I just thought it was weird. I'm buying stuff. Why are you telling me your name? Oh, I'm Qin Debao, I said. Wang Feng blushed again and whispered, we got some peach cookies today, but they're a bit broken, defective, so no tickets needed. Want some? I was thrilled and nodded eagerly. But honestly, those cookies weren't really broken. She'd clearly snapped them in half herself. More than half the bag was perfectly intact. In this era, being a shop clerk was one of the 8 most desirable jobs, along with bus conductor, driver, mailman, nursery worker, barber, waitress, and cook. The reason clerks ranked so high was simple. They could buy things ordinary people couldn't get. I walked out loaded with packages. Behind me, Zhang Kaling leaned over to Wang Feng. Well, did you ask his name? Wang Feng shook her head. She looked shy and a bit ditzy, but she was actually sharp. A catch like me wasn't something she planned to share. Zhang Kaling pouted, hoping for better luck next time. I stopped at a state-run restaurant called Service Building on Gulu Street and ate 2 steamer trays of dumplings. Thin skin, big filling. This place would still be famous decades later, though right now they were rationed because the meat plant couldn't supply enough. They were so good I bought 2 more trays for Nyonya. They'd keep fine in my space. By now it was probably past 1 in the afternoon. Time to head to the steel mill to sell my wild boar meat. On the way, I passed the old Imperial City Wall and paused to look. Last year they'd torn down the Guangyuan Gate Tower, the Northwest Corner Tower, and the Yongdingmen Gate Tower and Arrow Tower. People had carted the bricks home. By 1965, the entire wall would be gone. Hundreds of years of history, built since the Yuan dynasty, erased completely. I strolled over to the Red Star Steel Mill and got there around 1:30. The mill was still a state-private joint venture. The old owner, Liu Half-City, was a director in name only and didn't manage anything anymore. The current director was a former military officer named Yang, and the party secretary was a guy named Lang, a former underground agent who was good friends with Zhao Yuchu, Sha Chun's father. The mill was a semi-military enterprise with strict security. Even the gate guards were from the security department, carrying guns. You couldn't just walk in. The guard stopped me and asked what I wanted. I said I was looking for Hiyuju. The guard shook his head. With over 10,000 workers, he didn't know any Hiyuju. I quickly said, Silly Zhu, instead, and the guard laughed. Nicknames always work better than real names. He called the cafeteria, and within 10 minutes Silly Zhu came running out, hatless and sweating. Silly Zhu lived on the same lane as us in Nanluo Guxiang, just in a different courtyard, a 3-courtyard compound that supposedly housed some big official during the Republic era. He was 5 years older than me. We didn't hang out much at this point, but in my past life we became good friends. His sister's boyfriend ended up being my apprentice. He looked at me like he recognized my face, but couldn't place the name. I pulled out a cigarette and handed him one. Zhu Ji, it's me, Qin Debao from Courtyard 113. Oh, he remembered. Not me exactly, but my dad, because my niece Qin Huiru married Jia Dongshu from Silly Zhu's courtyard. That connection jogged his memory. I pulled him aside. Zhu Ji, does your cafeteria need meat? His eyes lit up. Need it? Everywhere needs meat. We've got over 10,000 workers. How much meat do you think that takes? Why, you got a source? I nodded. He grabbed my hand. Brother, did I hear you right? You can get meat? I can get some. Yeah. How much? I thought it over. About 8 or 900 Gene. He let out a yelp and took off running. I was startled. This guy definitely had something wrong with him. Wait for me, he yelled over his shoulder. I'm getting my director. About 10 minutes later, I saw a figure sprinting toward me from the distance, all in white, covered in flour, wearing a black apron. Up close, it was an old man with a white beard, running so fast he was practically steaming. He lunged right at me. On reflex, I grabbed his wrist at the Jinsher pressure point and squeezed. He yelped in pain. Silly Zhu came panting behind him. Easy, brother. That's our director, Pan. I let go quickly. The old man's right arm was hanging limp. Young man, Silly Zhu says you can get pork? Is it true? How much? Silly Zhu caught up, gasping. Daping, this is Director Pan from the cafeteria. He was kneading dough for steamed buns. When I told him you had meat, he got so excited he knocked the flour basin over. Director Pan shook his arm out and wiped the flour off his face. Turned out he was only in his 40s. Director Pan, I can get you pork. But I have one condition. Name it. I want cash. No problem. Our mill is under the Ministry of Heavy Industry. We have special above-quota allowances for food and meat purchases. Buying from you is completely legal. I already knew that. It's exactly why I came to the steel mill. I didn't need money so much as I needed a legitimate explanation for having money. How much pork can you take? However much you've got. About 1,000 gene of wild boar. What's your price? Director Pan was overjoyed. I'll give you top black market price. 1 yuan 80 per gene for boneless meat. No head, hooves, or organs. Deal? I paused to calculate, and that pause nearly gave him a heart attack. The meat processing plant had only been delivering 400 gene a month to the whole mill. With the year-end production push, the deputy director had ordered Pan to guarantee the workers' nutrition by any means necessary. Pan had been tearing his hair out. Don't worry, young man. We won't shortchange you. I'll throw in 2 cases of Fingio liquor on top. All right, let's do the exchange somewhere else. Half an hour from now, there's a grove of trees east of the mill. The grove to the east? I know it. I'll have the meat ready there. Bring a scale. Absolutely. He grabbed Silly Zhu and ran back inside to get a truck. This was my first time doing a deal like this, and I was pretty nervous. I left the mill and took a casual walk east. It was work hours, so the streets were empty. At the grove, I made sure nobody was around and slipped into my space. Inside, the rice and wheat had fully ripened. The corn had tasseled but needed a bit more time. Cucumbers and tomatoes were already ripe. I picked a tomato and bit into it. Juice ran down my hand, sweet and tangy. Delicious. The grain was ripe, but not threshed. I wondered where I'd find equipment to process it. Then it hit me. In this space, I control everything with my thoughts. Could I just will the wheat into flour and the rice into white rice? I plucked a wheat stalk, focused my mind, and it turned to snow-white flour right in my hand. Amazing. I stepped out of the space, still a bit dazed, when I heard a truck engine in the distance. I'd almost forgotten about the deal. I quickly waved my hand behind me, and 3 big wild boars plus 2 smaller ones appeared in the clearing between the trees, all butchered and cleaned, probably over 800 gene total. The truck pulled up right outside the grove at the same moment. I wiped the cold sweat off my forehead. That was way too close to getting caught. Director Pan and Silly Zhu jumped out of the truck cab. A few young guys in white aprons hopped off the back, cafeteria apprentices. The 2 of them snuck into the grove like thieves and found me leaning against a tree, grinning. Pan's eyes lit up the moment he saw the pile of pork behind me. This solved his biggest problem. His buyers and the procurement team had been struggling to find meat for weeks. The meat processing plant had cut their supply to just 400 gene a month for over 10,000 workers. With this load, at least he wouldn't worry for the rest of the week. Go ahead and weigh it, I said. Pan was an experienced buyer. One glance told him it was 800 or 900 gene. He squeezed the meat and noticed it was still warm, incredibly fresh. He didn't stop to wonder how meat could be warm in this freezing weather unless it was just slaughtered. Young brother, you're really something, he beamed. Silly Zhu rolled his eyes, a man pushing 50 calling an 18-year-old, brother, have some dignity. Silly Zhu had his apprentices weigh everything while Pan handed me a Daping and cigarette. We smoked and waited. After about 15 minutes, Silly Zhu came over. Director, Daping, 928 gene total. Pan waved his hand. Rounded up to 930. He pulled out a thick envelope and counted. Brother, 1,800. Check it if you want. He was 3 yuan short of exact change, but nobody cared. I didn't count it. Just stuck it in my school bag, which really meant into my space. No need to check. Business runs on trust. Pan nodded happily, then ran to the truck and came back carrying 2 cases of liquor, practically skipping. Brother, I'm sorry. We were out of Fingio, so I took the liberty of swapping it for Maudai. You don't mind, do? Silly Zhu's eyes nearly popped out. He knew perfectly well there were still 2 cases of Fingio in that truck. But he caught on. If I'd counted the money just now, showing I didn't trust Pan, those cases would have stayed as Fingio. Because I showed trust, Pan upgraded me. Smart man. Oh, that's too generous. Thank you, Director Pan. Hey, call me Panji. Silly Zhu wanted to cry. He'd introduced this deal and somehow ended up a generation lower in the pecking order. One more question, brother. Will there be more meat in the future? I won't lie to you. I hunted these myself. There should be more, but I can't say when. Pan was thrilled. No problem. Whenever you've got something, bring it. We'll take however much you have, and I'll beat any black market price. Deal. When I've got more, I'll have Zhuji let you know. I shook his hand and slipped out through the back of the grove. I didn't want too many people knowing about this arrangement, but I also knew Silly Zhu had a big mouth and would definitely mention it to my dad, which was actually exactly what I wanted. After I left, Pan gave Silly Zhu a cigarette and lit it for him. Then he said quietly, Zhu, keep an eye on young Qin for me. If he's got good stuff, you have my permission to buy on the spot for the factory. Also, I'm reporting to the front office. You're getting promoted to group leader of Cafeteria 1. 1 pay grade up. Silly Zhu had been stuck at 27.5 yuan a month for years because his mouth got him in trouble with the bosses despite his great cooking. Now 1 introduction was getting him bumped to 31 yuan plus a group leader bonus. 36 a month total. He was over the moon. On my way home, I found a quiet spot and pulled out a burlap sack from my space. Inside was a small boar, about 50 or 60 jin, plus 10 jin of rice and 10 jin of white flour. I didn't dare take out more, too much would scare my family. I buried 2 bottles of liquor in the rice. The sack was heavy, but nothing for me now. The moment I walked through the courtyard gate, Annie Ma from the West Wing was lighting her coal stove by the door. Her husband, Uncle Ma, was the stingiest man in our compound. People said he rivaled Yin Bugue from Courtyard 95, the type who'd taste the sewage truck to check if it was salty enough. Annie Ma was the same. Never missed a chance to grab something for free. She spotted my sack immediately and rushed over. Debeo, what V you got there? Looks heavy. I wasn't planning to hide it. Living in the same courtyard, everyone can smell what you're cooking. Better to be open about it. I pulled out the small boar and she jumped back. Oh my, what is that? A pig? Debeo, did you steal someone's piglet? You can't do that. You know, Auntie's telling you, don't go down the wrong path. Her mouth ran like a machine gun. I couldn't get a word in, but I noticed her eyes never left the pig. I stuffed it back in the sack, annoyed. Auntie Ma, your mouth works fine, but your eyes don't. That's a wild boar. I shot it in the mountains near my grandparents' village. Who did I steal from? I showed her the head. Look, do domestic pigs have tusks this big? Hair this rough? Come on. She stood there speechless for a moment. I rolled my eyes and started walking home, but she grabbed my sleeve with a big fake smile. Oh, sweetie, I was just teasing. Why so serious? Look at you, such a capable young man. Hunting a boar this big. I knew exactly where this was going. Debeo, this little pig must be 50 or 60 jin. Your family is only 5 people. Can you even eat all that? I yanked my sleeve free. Whether we can finish it or not is none of your business. I carried the sack home. Good thing I got back early, before the workers came home from their shifts. If the neighbors had all been around, I might not have made it inside with this boar in one piece. Behind me, I heard Annie Ma muttering curses under her breath. Keeping it all to yourself? Hope you choke on it. What kind of person? I almost laughed. Some people will do anything for a free bite. They don't even care about their own dignity. I got home and went straight to the main room. Nuno was on the Kong playing with pig knucklebones, polished smooth from years of use. She was having a great time, but the moment she saw me, she dropped everything and reached out her little hands. Brother, hold me. I tossed my school bag aside, took off my coat and hat, and picked her up. Her hands and cheeks were nice and warm. Where's Mom? Nuno pointed outside. Mama buying big radish. That explained why Mom didn't come out during my argument with Auntie Ma. She was at the vegetable shop. They only got a few hundred jin of radish at a time, first come first served. I squeezed her little face. Did you miss me? She threw both hands up. Yes, I kissed her hard. I'm definitely what people in the future would call a sister-obsessed maniac. I reached into my bag and pulled out a handful of white rabbit milk candies and a bag of peach cookies. I unwrapped one candy and popped it in her mouth. Her eyes lit up instantly, and she threw her arms around my neck. Brother, yummy. Mom came in carrying 2 big radishes, all smiles. Son, I grabbed 2 radishes. I'll make stuffed buns later, Nino clapped. Buns. Buns. I set Nino down and took the radishes from Mom. Her hands were ice cold, covered in tiny cracks from washing clothes in cold water every day. 5 people's laundry, all by hand. I couldn't help feeling a pang in my heart thinking about how hard she worked. Then Mom noticed Nino chewing something. Nino, what are you eating? Candy. Nino held up both palms, showing 3 milk candies. White rabbit candy. Who gave you those, brother? And cookies too. Mom spun around. Daping, where did this candy come from? I had her sit on the edge of the Kong, then pulled out the small boar, the rice, and the flour from the sack. She nearly jumped off the Kong. Where did you get all this? Her voice was shaking. Mom, when I went hunting the other day, I didn't just get 2 wild boars. I actually got 5 big ones and this small one. I was afraid the villagers would take everything, so I hid the rest in the mountains. This morning I got Daping and his friends to help sneak them down. Mom relaxed. She knew my character. I'd never do anything shady. She'd been a little bothered that I gave all the meat to the village without keeping any. But she's a big-hearted woman who doesn't hold grudges. My boy is clever. What about the other 3 big ones? I sold them. Sold what? Sold them? She was scared again. Son, private trading is illegal. You could go to prison. Mom, relax. I sold them to Dad's factory cafeteria. Silly Zhu helped me arrange it. Selling to a state enterprise is perfectly fine. The weight lifted off her chest. Selling to individuals was forbidden, but selling to a government workplace was no problem. She pinched my cheek, then suddenly remembered something. Where's the money? I pulled the cash from my bag and put it on the Kong. Mom got scared for the 3rd time today. This much? The total was 1,800 yuan. This is 1,500. I used the rest to buy 10 jin of rice, 10 jin of flour through a friend's. Dad traded for some ration tickets, got Nino a jin of milk candy and a jin of white sugar, plus these peach cookies. Those didn't need tickets. She was stunned. 1,800 yuan. Our family's entire savings weren't that much. It would take Dad 2.5 years to earn that. She didn't question the money I kept for myself. A growing boy needs pocket money for friends in life. This is wonderful. With this money, we can buy you a job at your dad's factory. She was beaming as she counted the bills, sitting up straighter like the money had put iron in her spine. When she mentioned buying a job, I jumped in. Mom, hold off on that. I visited Master Tong today and heard the City Police Bureau is recruiting after New Year. I meet all the requirements. I want my second senior brother to pull some strings. If it doesn't work out, we can try the factory job later. Oh, please. The police recruit cadres. We don't know anyone important. How would we get picked? Mom, my second senior brother works at Jiangwomen Police Station. He's got connections. If he had connections, wouldn't he have gotten Daping a job already? Are you closer to him than Daping is? Mom, Daping can't pass the background check. His family's class status is too bad. That made her pause. Class status was everything right now. Although Mom had been separated from her own family 20 years ago, Dad's background was spotless. 8 generations of poor farmers, plus he'd been an underground courier. His political review was rock solid. Mom got off the Kong and wiped her face. I smiled to myself. I could see the tear marks on her cheeks. Wait here. I'm making buns for you too. Meat filling, Nino cheered. Yay? Meat buns. Meat buns. The buns were wrapped and just starting to steam when Dad came home from work. He'd been exhausted lately, overworked and underfed. He was sweating despite the cold, legs barely carrying him. He handed Mom his lunchbox in a mesh bag. There's a corn bun and half a box of cabbage tofu stew. Heat it up for the kids. Mom took it and brushed the snow off his clothes. Look at you. What happened? Why are you covered in snow? Dad smiled his honest smile. Slipped and fell. Silly Zhu caught me, or I would have twisted my ankle. I'm fine. Is Daping home? Mom pointed to the main room. Been home a while. In there telling Nino stories. Dad sniffed the air. What's going on? Steaming buns. Yes, buns. Go wash up. Dinner in 10 minutes. Dad walked in looking like he had something on his mind. I was sitting on the Kong reading Nino a picture book, Journey to the West, the chapter about the white-bone demon. She was leaning against me with her chin in her little hands, completely absorbed. Dad, welcome home, Nano piped up. Daddy, we're having buns. Meat ones. No matter how tired Dad was, the moment he saw his little girl, all the exhaustion melted away. His face broke into a huge grin as he scooped her up. Dad came in and got right to it. Debeo, silly Zhu told me you sold some wild boars to the cafeteria. What's going on? I nodded and told him the same story I told Mom. I'd actually killed 5 big boars plus 1 small one, hid the extras in the mountains, had Daping help me bring them down today, kept the small one, and sold the rest to the factory. No wonder silly Zhu wouldn't shut up about you on the way home, saying how amazing you are. How much did you get? 1,800. Gave Mom 1,500. Used the rest to buy some rice and flour, plus some things for Nano. How much? 1,800? Dad's mouth hung open so wide you could see his tonsils. His voice cracked like a goose. I pulled out 2 bottles of Moutai from inside the rice bag in the cabinet. While Mom wasn't looking, she'd confiscate them for sure. Director Pan gave me these. I saved them for you. Dad wasn't a heavy drinker yet, so Moutai didn't excite him too much. But then he zeroed in on the money. Why'd you only give your mom 1,500? Where's the rest? What does a kid need that much pocket money for? That's the difference between Dad and Mom. He's tight. She's generous. I knew his personality too well, so I just didn't answer. Nano saved me by stuffing a milk candy into Dad's mouth. Smart girl. Only 2 years old and she already knew Dad was about to scold me, so she shut him up with sugar. Oh, milk candy? My baby girl is the best. Daddy won't eat it. You have it. He pulled the wet candy out of his mouth and tried putting it in Nyo's mouth. That was so disgusting I snatched my sister away. Dad grumbled and popped the candy back in his own mouth. Mom came in with 2 chunks of pork, about a gene each. Take these to Uncle Zhang and Brother Nyo and invite them over for dinner. Dad quickly hid the Moutai in the cabinet. No way he was wasting that on guests. Uncle Zhang was Zhang Shuyuan, 56, an old bachelor who worked as a night watchman at the consignment shop on Ping'an Street. He used to have a wife, kids, and a pawn shop, but he crossed the Japanese over some antique. They destroyed his family, killed his wife and children, seized his business, and broke his leg. He begged on the streets until liberation, when the government gave him a job and a room. He lived alone in our compound, happy enough on the surface, but I knew he'd been through so much he'd just decided to take life one day at a time. Uncle Zhang was actually very talented. 3 generations of his family ran pawn shops. In my past life, he taught me calligraphy and how to appraise antiques. When he died, I handled everything. We never formally called each other master and student, but that's exactly what we were. Brother Nyo was a rickshaw puller, neck bender, they called it, at the labor service, which was now state-run. Our families had lived next door since we moved to the city. We watched each other's kids grow up, practically one family. Dad brought them both over. Uncle Zhang hobbled in laughing. You little rascal, you've really got skills now? Hunting wild boars. I rolled my eyes. This old man was like a mischievous kid, always looking to bicker. Brother Nyo was impressed too. This boy changes every day. Looks so gentle and scholarly, but he's got the guts to hunt boars. I puffed out my chest. Naturally, everyone laughed. This brat, Mom called from the kitchen. Dinner. Set up the table. We put the square table on the Kong, standard northern setup. In winter, sitting on a warm Kong, sipping liquor, eating good food, that's pure bliss. I helped Mom bring out the dishes. Nothing fancy, sliced pork, the cabbage tofu Dad brought home stir-fried together, and a shredded cabbage radish salad. Simple stuff, but in Beijing right now, most families ate nothing but pickled vegetables. This was a feast. Dad brought out a bottle of Erbau too. 27 fun, every Beijing man's favorite. Strong and satisfying. 3 tea mugs, 3 liang each, split evenly. Nobody could afford to drink heavily, so a few liang was perfect, just enough for a warm buzz. Brother Nyo struck a match and lit the 65-proof liquor on fire. A blue flame danced on the surface, beautiful. Hot liquor in winter warms you right through. Nyo loved watching the flame and clapped her hands on the table. Then Mom brought out a big plate of steaming buns. I set down the garlic dipping sauce. The buns were made with mixed flour, mostly cornmeal with some white flour. Nobody could afford pure white flour. The filling was pork and shredded radish. Mom had planned all-meat filling but couldn't bring herself to use that much, so she stretched it with radish. Even so, everyone at the table was deeply satisfied. A bite of bun, a sip of liquor, soon everyone was sweating. I ate slowly because I was feeding Nyo. Brother Nyo asked about a rumor that the railway was hiring train drivers. I told him it was true. My classmate had already signed up, testing after New Year. Start as a fireman, then learn to drive. That's great. Nyo, you should sign your boy Dolly up right away. Brother Nyo sighed over his drink. I'm just a laborer. No connections. Would they even take our kid? That's true. We don't know anyone at the railway. What if Daping and Dolly went together? Maybe we could spend some money and get both boys jobs? Uncle Zhang spoke up calmly. Don't worry about Daping. I'm retiring in May. He can take over my position. Mom came in with another tray of buns. Uncle Zhang, absolutely not. You've got 4 years until retirement. You can't leave early. That's not right. Why not? I'm an old man with no family. You two have been taking care of me all these years. If I don't give my job to Daping, who would I give it to? Besides, with this boy's heart, he'll look after me in my old age. Stop right there, old man. Take care of your health and keep working. I've got my own plan for work. You're like my grandson. If I don't worry about you, who will? Please. I wouldn't want your job anyway, you little punk. What's wrong with my job? Everyone was used to our bickering. They knew we were close, and this was just how we showed it. I fed Nyo the filling from my bun and ate the skin myself. Don't worry, I've got a plan. Nobody needs to fuss about my job. Brother Nyo, just take your household registration and the neighborhood committee letter to sign Dolly up. I'll talk to my classmate and see if we can pull some strings to get him in. Brother Nyo grinned. That'd be wonderful. Dad put down his chopsticks. Son, you said you have a plan. What plan? You'll find out when the time comes. Dad went to work in the morning and Mom left for the neighborhood factory to pick up matchbox pasting work. Just me and Nyo at home. Since I had money now, I decided to take my sister out for breakfast on Gula Street. Nyo was thrilled. This was the first time in her life she'd ever eaten at a restaurant. She sat on the stool, bouncing up and down, holding her little hands over her mouth to keep the drool from running down. Adorable beyond words. Brother, eat. Hungry. Tummy hungry. I fed her jiaochuan crullers, sneaking bites of my own flatbread between spoonfuls. I soaked fried dough strips in soy milk and fed her bit by bit since her stomach was delicate. Her little mouth was stuffed full, but she kept grabbing my hand, trying to push more in. Suddenly, there was commotion in the alley. Everyone was running somewhere. Old Du, the breakfast shop owner, jumped off his stool to look and came racing back. It's the steel mill director Zhao's boy, Zhao Sujue. He's choking on a date pit. That's serious. A date pit stuck in your throat can kill you in minutes. I jumped up and shouted back, Uncle Du, watch my sister for me. I pushed through the crowd. A man was holding an 8 or 9-year-old boy, about to rush him to the hospital. I recognized him right away, Zhao Sujue, Sha Chun's little brother. His face was already turning purple. No time to explain. I grabbed the kid, stood him in front of me, wrapped my arms around his stomach, and gave 5 hard squeezes. Sujue opened his mouth, and out came a bloody date pit. I let out a breath of relief. Before I could even react, someone kicked me hard from behind, and I went sprawling face first. Who are you? How dare you bully my brother? I recognized that voice immediately. Clutching my aching back, I yelled, Damn it, Zhao Suchuan. You're going to kill me. The cursing came out so naturally it surprised even me. Pure habit from 2 lifetimes. Of course it was Sha Chun, the same girl from the black market the other night. Big eyes, thick brows, patched-together clothes, acting more like a wild boy than a girl. Little Sujue started crying. Sha Chun, that date you gave me almost killed me. Daping saved my life, and you kicked him. Sha Chun started yelping apologies and yanked me to my feet. No gentle touch as usual. That kick still had me seeing stars. Sorry. She flashed that infectious grin that always makes you forgive her. Fine. Where are you headed? Mom sent me to buy vinegar. Oh no. Where's my bottle? She spun around and took off running. Typical. She's always losing things. I gave Sujue a light kick. Get over to the breakfast shop. Nyo's eating crullers. If you don't hurry, there won't be any left. He cheered and sprinted off. Sha Chun's dad, Zhao Yuchu, was a cultured man but terribly old-fashioned about preferring sons. For daughters, and this one precious boy, not exactly spoiled, but treated like a jewel. I'd barely sat back down and bitten into an oil cake when Sha Chun came charging back, grabbed the half-eaten cake right out of my hand, and started munching. "Debeo, thank you. You saved my brother's life." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl just snatched food from a guy's hand. Food he'd already bitten into. But that's Sha Chun. She's basically a tomboy with zero concept of boundaries between boys and girls. "So your mom had another baby?" I asked. "Which number?" She counted on her fingers, muttering a line of poetry. "Number 5. Named Zhao Suxiao." I was deeply impressed. Director Zhao had ordered his wife to have 10 children, enough to fill out the first 2 lines of the famous poem Spring Dawn by Meng Haoren, 1 character per kid. The man was committed. We walked home with the 2 little ones. Sha Chun's family lived at No. 49 Nanluo Guxiang, near the Gulu Street end. Nyonyo held my hand quietly, still happy from breakfast, a proper little lady. Sujue was the opposite, running wild through the snow. Just like Erbau, only tolerable when asleep. Watching Sujue strut around, my foot itched. This kid was only tough at home with his sisters. No real skills whatsoever. "Hey Sha Laoda, give me 20 fun for candy," he yelled at Sha Chun. Before he could finish, I punted him 2 meters. "Show some respect. Call your sister that again, and I'll kick you harder." Sujue feared me deep in his bones. I'd been beating manners into him since he was 3, mostly for calling his sister silly boss. Kids in the alley never told their parents about fights. You'd just get beaten again at home for tattling. This kid was thick-skinned, though. He did a somersault, made a face at me, and ran off. I wasn't really trying to hurt him anyway. Sha Chun invited me over, but I knew her mom was in confinement after the new baby, so I declined. With Sha Chun, you have to be blunt. She takes polite excuses literally. Back home, Mom had returned too. I gave her the leftover half-fried dough stick and 2 flatbreads. She ate the dough stick happily, but saved the flatbreads for Erbau. The kid had missed out on all the good food lately. That's what I love about Mom. Generous, practical, no fuss. If Dad had seen me take Nyonyo out for breakfast, he'd nag for half an hour straight. In my past life, once Dad became a heavy drinker, he was half-conscious most of the time, which at least meant less nagging. "Debeo, my right eyelid's been twitching all night. Something feels off. Go pick up your brother from Grandma's this morning, would you? He's probably driving her crazy." I shook my head. That's Mom and Erbau's relationship in a nutshell. Can't stand him when he's around. Can't stop thinking about him when he's not. I grabbed my school bag and headed out to pick up Erbau from the countryside. Instead of taking the bus, I found a quiet spot and pulled a bicycle from my space. I rode like a thief the whole way because the bike didn't have a police stamp. If someone stopped me, I'd be in trouble. Luckily, I made it to the village without any issues. 2 hours of hard pedaling, and I wasn't even breathing heavy. This body was impressive. Only problem was the cold. My face went numb and my snot froze into icicles. I stashed the bicycle and pulled out some grain from my space. 10 gene of rice, 10 gene of white flour, and 50 gene of cornmeal. I put it all in a sack and threw it over my shoulder. I couldn't give Grandpa and Grandma too much. They'd just give it all to the grandkids and not eat any themselves. The moment I pushed open their door, I knew something was wrong. The house was ice cold, like the fire hadn't been lit in a long time. Inside, Grandpa sat on the edge of the Kong, head down, smoking silently. Grandma was leaning against the bedding, wiping tears. My heart dropped. Grandma saw me and started crying harder. I rushed over and set down the sack. "Grandma, what happened?" "Don't cry. I'm here. Whatever it is, we'll handle it." Grandpa sighed. "It's Erbau. Yesterday, he went out playing with his cousins. Must have caught a chill or got scared by something. Middle of the night, he spiked a high fever. Your grandma called old lady Lou to do the folk healing thing. Didn't help. I sent your second uncle and third uncle to take him to the township clinic." My heart shot into my throat. In my past life, it was my sister who got a high fever and got the wrong injection at the hospital. That's what made her mentally disabled. Was fate about to do the same thing to my brother? I couldn't let myself panic in front of them. "It's fine, Grandma. Kids get fevers and colds all the time. If it were serious, my uncles would have come to tell us already." That calmed them down a little. Grandma, here's some grain. My classmate's dad works at the grain bureau and gets extra allocations. Eat it, don't hold back. When it's gone, I'll bring more." "Sweetheart, why bring all this? We're old people with 1 foot in the grave. Take it home for yourself." My heart ached. I pulled out the white sugar and leftover peach cookies from my bag, set them on the Kong, and hurried out before they could argue. I'm going to the clinic to check on Erbau. Don't worry. I jogged out of the village, barely stopping to greet people. Once I was clear, I pulled out the bicycle and pedaled like mad. I found the township clinic after asking for directions. I was in such a rush that I stashed the bike without checking if anyone was watching. An old man nearby rubbed his eyes, muttering to himself, "Wasn't that kid riding a bicycle? Where'd it go?" Then he sighed, "I need to stop drinking. My eyes are playing tricks." If that had been a young person instead of a half-drunk old man, my secret would have been blown. Inside the clinic, I nearly crashed into third uncle coming the other way. "Daping? How'd you know to come?" "I went to Grandma's." "How's Erbau?" "Fever came down a bit, but it's still high." The doctor prescribed 2 more bottles of medicine. "Your second uncle, and I didn't bring enough money." "I was just heading out to find your dad. I've got money. Let's go pay." We rushed to the payment window. While waiting in line, I asked what medicine they prescribed. Third uncle scratched his head. "Something Cillin, something Lin." My stomach dropped. "Do you have the prescription?" "Let me see it." He dug a small slip of paper from his pocket. I took one look and my eyes nearly popped out. I knew this drug all too well. It had devastating side effects. In my past life, it wasn't just my sister. Countless children across the country were made mentally disabled by this medication. It stayed in use for over 20 years before finally being banned in 1978. Cold sweat drenched my back instantly. If I hadn't come in time, Erbau would have died. I couldn't finish the thought. I knew better than to argue with the doctor about it. I pocketed the prescription. "We're not staying here. I'm taking Erbau to the military district hospital. No matter what era, military hospitals are the ones you can trust." Third uncle looked confused but saw how urgent I was and nodded. In the observation room, Erbau had finished his 4-drip and was sleeping fitfully. Second uncle stood beside him, wringing his hands. "City kids are so delicate," he muttered. "My boys never get sick like this." He looked relieved when he saw me. "Second uncle." "Third uncle. I'll take Erbau to the military hospital. You two have been up all night. Go home and tell Grandpa and Grandma he's fine." They agreed. They wouldn't know their way around the city anyway. The clinic's paperwork was simple. Just tell the doctor you're leaving and go. Most of these rural doctors were just punching a clock anyway. They knew how to prescribe medicine and nothing else. I reminded my uncles not to make it sound too serious when telling Grandpa and Grandma. No need to worry them more. I took off my coat and wrapped Erbau up tight. He opened his eyes groggily and mumbled, "Brother." I nearly cried. Carrying him out of the clinic, the winter wind hit me hard and I shivered. My thin cotton jacket was 3 years old. The padding inside had compressed into hard sheets, useless against the cold. I had cotton in my space. I needed to find a chance to bring some out and make the whole family new winter clothes. The military hospital mostly served soldiers, so ordinary people went to civilian hospitals. That meant it wasn't crowded. I carried Erbau the whole way, 13 kilometers, practically running. My face and body were drenched in sweat, but I didn't feel tired at all. Erbau's head hung soft against my shoulder. This kid only behaves when he's sick. I registered and went straight to internal medicine. The doctor was a man in his 40s with a shell fragment scar across his forehead, clearly a combat veteran. Lucky to still have his head. "What's wrong with the child?" His voice was rough but gentle. I explained the fever and the 4 at the township clinic, then handed him the prescription they'd written. I read in a book that this drug has bad side effects, so I didn't let them use it on my brother. He glanced at the prescription and snorted. "Quack doctors harming people." He checked Erbau's temperature, 38.5, still a high fever for a child. Looked at his tongue and felt his pulse. "No for needed. 3 doses of herbal medicine will bring the fever down." He prescribed Guiji Tang, a classic formula from Zhongjing. I knew a fair bit about medicine myself. In my past life, my sister took so many medications I'd studied several medical books just to keep up. I borrowed a clay pot from the pharmacy and started boiling the herbs on the hallway stove. In the future, someone would file a complaint about that, but right now it was perfectly normal. I kept running back and forth between the pot and the room. Erbau had woken up and was munching on milk candies, looking like he'd decided being sick wasn't so bad. While the medicine was almost ready, I heard someone calling my name. Mom came running up the stairs, sweating, scarf barely wrapped. My uncles must have gone home and told her. "How's your brother? Did the fever break?" "He's in the room. Nothing serious. Medicine's almost done. She burst into the room and I heard Erbau crying. Then Mom's voice calling him her little sweetheart. That's Mom. 1 minute chasing him around the yard with a broom screaming, "You little brat." The next minute it's, "My precious baby." The medicine cooled down and I brought it in. Mom was holding Erbau while he sucked on another candy. "Mom, who's watching Nyo-Nyo?" Auntie Nyo. "When your second uncle told me, I nearly had a heart attack. It's just a cold from the wind." He was probably running around with the other kids, got sweaty, then caught a chill. Mom poked Erbau's forehead. "Serves you right. Think you'll show off again?" Erbau looked pitiful. "Mom, I'm hungry." I told Mom I'd go buy some food and headed downstairs. By afternoon, Erbau's fever had finally broken. The doctor checked him again and said we could take him home. Just finish the remaining 2 doses. On the bus home, Erbau fell asleep in my arms again. Looking at his little face, waves of fear washed over me. That had been way too close. At home, I grabbed the ration booklets and went out to buy supplies. I wanted to make Erbau something good to eat. I went to the grocery shop at the corner of Gulu Street and Jiaofu Street instead of the supply cooperative, because this shop had the best yellow soybean paste, essential for proper Beijing-style noodles with fried sauce. But the rations were tiny, 2 liang of paste per person per month. For our family of 5, that was 1 jean total. I bought it all. At the vegetable shop, the meat ration was 2 liang of pork per person per month, barely enough to fill a tooth gap. But everyone got the same amount. No more, no less. That's how things were. Everything was scarce. Still, people's happiness levels were actually pretty high back then. As Confucius said, people don't worry about having little, they worry about having less than others. Everyone was equally poor. The gap between rich and poor was just the difference between a full stomach and a half-full one. I bought all our monthly rations of oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar, then cleaned out the grain shop too. Coarse and fine grain combined was about 100 jean for 5 people. I bought it all. Grain keeps. Near home, I secretly pulled 2 cucumbers and 3 tomatoes from my space. Couldn't take more. Out-of-season vegetables like these were only available to top officials. Regular people couldn't even dream of it. Mom was in the yard boiling medicine. She saw me loaded with groceries, but said nothing. Her son had grown up, seemingly overnight, and was shouldering responsibility. At the hospital, watching me crouch by the stove boiling herbs, she'd felt every emotion at once. So when I grabbed the ration books and walked out, she didn't stop me. She just felt grateful. Inside, Nyo-Nyo was carefully pressing a wet towel to Erbau's forehead and feeding him bits of peach cookie. I felt his head. The fever was completely gone, though he was weak. Then I saw both kids finishing their cookies and reaching for cold water, and cold sweat broke out all over me again. Greasy cookies plus cold water on tiny stomachs? In an era with the worst sanitation, even dysentery could kill. I could have slapped myself. 2 lifetimes, and I still didn't have childcare instincts. I rushed to get a cup and secretly filled it with spirit well water from my space. Nyo-Nyo drank half a cup easily. Erbau was harder. He'd already guzzled a big scoop of regular cold water and didn't want more. I had to coax and threaten him until he finally drank it. I held Nyo-Nyo and listened to her tummy. No problems. Erbau sat there gnawing on a tomato, thinking that being sick was actually great since the whole family revolved around him. If he could, he'd stay sick forever. Good thing I didn't know what he was thinking, or I'd have spanked him raw. Nyo-Nyo's face was covered in tomato juice. I held back my laughter and wiped her clean. With Mom busy boiling medicine outside, I decided to cook dinner myself and give her a break. I'm actually a pretty good cook. I even spent a few months learning from Silly Zhu's master back in my past life. I scooped out 2 big bowls of flour. I was going to make proper Beijing fried sauce noodles for the family. I told Erbau and Nyo-Nyo to play in the room while I got to work. First I kneaded the dough and set it aside to rest. Then I diced up some pork, heated oil in the wok. We still had half a bottle left, which by my standards would last 2 meals. Any normal family would stretch that half bottle over 3 months. I was being a total spendthrift. The moment the meat hit the hot oil, that sizzling aroma rose up. Nyo-Nyo couldn't resist. She came and squatted by the kitchen doorway, watching me cook, practically drooling. When I added the yellow soybean paste, the smell spread through the whole courtyard. A neighbor poked their head out, saw it was our family cooking, muttered something rude, and ducked back inside. I ignored them. I took the wok off the fire to let the meat sauce sit and deepen in flavor. Then I filled the aluminum pot with water for the noodles. I brought Nyo inside the kitchen. Too windy at the door, set her on a stool, then picked up the cleaver and spun it in a flashy knife flower. Erbau and Nyo both gasped in admiration. Feeling quite pleased with myself, I started cutting cucumber into thin strips. A proper Beijing fried sauce noodle needs 8 types of vegetable toppings, but the shop only had cucumber and the rosy-hearted radish. A bit disappointing. When it comes to cooking and carving, I get a little obsessive. I arranged the green cucumber strips and dark red radish strips neatly on a plate. The kids oohed and awed again. Mom came back carrying the medicine stove. She'd been boiling herbs outside because the smell was too strong. She hadn't even noticed the cooking aroma until she stepped inside and found me at the stove with Nyo on her little stool, clapping and saying, "Brother is amazing." Mom froze. 17 years as my mother, and she'd never known I could cook. The dough was ready. I cracked an egg into it for chewiness, rolled it out, and had a basin of fresh hand-pulled noodles on the table in 10 minutes. Mom set down the medicine and stared at me. "Are you really my son?" Dad came home right then, sniffing at the door. "Who's cooking? Smells incredible. Wait, why are you boiling medicine? Who's sick?" Mom was still in a daze. She pointed her chin toward the kitchen. "Is that really my son in there?" Dad peeked in. "Daping, you made fried sauce noodles? And is that cucumber? Where do you get cucumber in winter? My senior brother gave me some. There's tomatoes too. The kids already ate those. Now hurry up and set the table." Nyo jumped up. "Dinner time." I filled a big bowl first, noodles, toppings, a generous ladle of meat sauce, and handed it to Dad. "For Uncle Zhang." Dad trotted off happily to deliver it, not minding at all that his son was bossing him around. We brought everything to the Kong table. I served everyone. White noodles, dark sauce, bright green cucumber, deep red radish. Just looking at it made your mouth water. Nyo wouldn't let me feed her this time. She couldn't quite use chopsticks yet, so she wound the noodles around them and slurped. I secretly poured everyone half a cup of spirit well water from my space, worried the sauce might be too salty. Erbau picked up a fallen noodle from the table and popped it in his mouth without a thought. People who've been through hunger have a reverence for food. Parents back then would scold their kids while picking up every dropped grain of rice and eating it themselves. Nowadays, who'd do that? As the old folks say, people just haven't been hungry enough. The whole family ate until they were stuffed. I cleaned up while Dad patted his belly and stretched. Then he noticed the medicine on the dresser. "Who's sick?" Mom ruffled Erbau's hair. "Your precious youngest." Dad grabbed Erbau and felt his forehead. Mom explained everything. The fever, the township clinic, how I'd taken him to the military hospital instead. The army doctor prescribed 3 doses of herbal medicine, and 1 dose had already knocked the fever out. Erbau crawled to Mom's side, whining. "Mom, I'm all better. Do I really have to take more? It's so bitter. I'll give you 2 candies after." "Mama, I want candy too," Nyo piped up. "Fine, 2 each." Both kids cheered. From the kitchen, washing dishes, I heard them celebrating and smiled. This was home. The home I dreamed about. Protecting this family was the whole reason I came back. Next morning, after reheated buns for breakfast, Erbau was completely recovered and bouncing off the walls again. Mom banned him from going outside, so he followed me everywhere like a shadow. I was so annoyed I almost regretted saving him yesterday. Out of spite, I bundled up Nyo and announced we were going for a walk. Erbau frantically started getting dressed too, but Mom came in and crushed his escape attempt without mercy. I looked back at his dejected little face and felt deeply satisfied. Sweet revenge. I carried Nyo to the small supply shop on Gula Street. Inside, the same old sign. Do not hit or curse customers without reason. 5 employees total, all huddled around the iron stove with potatoes roasting on top, filling the air with a burnt smell. They saw me carrying a toddler, figured I was just browsing, and nobody bothered getting up. I took Nyo to the candy counter and pulled down her scarf. "What do you want?" "Brother will buy it." There wasn't much. White rabbit candies, fruit hard candy, dried hawthorn rolls. But everything was in glass jars, colorful and pretty. Nyo looked around shyly. We had candy at home already. Her little finger pointed at the hawthorn rolls. "Good choice. Hawthorn aids digestion. Though in times when people can barely eat enough, who needs help working up an appetite?" 5 rolls cost 50 fun, no tickets needed. These rolls were thick as a thumb, nothing like the skinny pinky-sized ones they'd sell in the future. Real quality. I also bought Nino a red knitted hat and a few pairs of socks for myself. 1 yuan 80 and half a chi of cloth tickets. I put the little red hat on her head. After a few days of proper eating, her color had improved a lot. I peeled open a hawthorn roll and let her nibble on it. She bounced happily in my arms. It was genuinely tasty, sweet, and tangy. Standing outside the supply shop, I noticed a young guy across the street in front of the grocery store. Nano, a Manchu kid I knew who dealt in cigarette and liquor tickets. In 1960, he'd get caught for speculation and sentenced to 3 years of hard labor out west. A middle-aged man in glasses sidled up to him. They whispered, swapped tickets for cash, and the glasses guy turned to leave. 2 steps later, 3 men with red armbands appeared out of nowhere and grabbed him. I caught Nano getting a subtle wave from one of the armband guys before slipping away. I curled my lip, entrapment. Same trick in every era. Nino smacked a sticky kiss on my cheek, her mouth happy from the hawthorn roll. That made me happy too. We strolled home. I had a cigarette craving after watching that scene, but one look at Nino and I held off. Didn't want to smoke around her. She finished her hawthorn roll and held up empty palms. Brother, all gone. Too cold out. You can have more at home. No. Little brother will steal it. If he tries, I'll beat him up for you. Beat. Brother. Beat. At home, Mom was at the Kong table pasting matchboxes. Erbau was on the bed meowing at the cat, having a staring contest. Nino wriggled free and ran to Mom to show off her new hat. Mom nodded. The one at the supply shop, right? 1 yuan 20. I saw it the other day but couldn't bring myself to buy it. Your brother really spoils you. Brother is good. Nino threw her arms around my neck and kissed me hard. Then she opened her palm to show Mom a hawthorn roll. Mama. Candy yummy. I turned around just in time. That cat had already pounced across the Kong, nearly crashing into the table. Little sister, Erbau flashed his brightest smile. Want to play with your big brother? Maybe share half that hawthorn roll. Nino dove into my arms. Brother, beat him, I swatted Erbau. You lose your mind every time you see food. He put on his shameless face. Brother, I want some too, please. I gave in and pulled out the remaining 3 rolls. Erbau reached for them, but Mom slapped his hand away. You already had 2 candies today. Hawthorn rolls are for tomorrow. Erbau looked devastated, watching Nino eat with hawthorn smeared all over her little face. He swallowed hard. He probably wished he still had a fever. I told Mom I was heading to Jiang Women Police Station to ask my second senior brother about the job opportunity. She agreed right away. Erbau grabbed my sleeve with desperate eyes, begging to come along. I picked him up and tossed him into the pile of bedding. Nino clapped from the side. Brother, beat. I got dressed, grabbed my school bag, and headed out. I didn't need to see my second senior brother, but not for myself, for Daping. His personality was just like his father's. Easygoing, kind, but stubborn to the bone. That stubbornness caused him nothing but suffering. In the future, after returning from years of hard labor as a sent-down youth, he'd become bitter and reckless with his words, cursing everything and everyone. Lucky for him, by then they'd stopped jailing people for speaking their minds, or he'd have been dead. This life, even if not for Daping himself, I had to help him for Master Tong and his wife's sake. It was 7 or 8 kilometers from Gulu Street to Jiang Women. I took the bus instead of the bicycle. The bus was packed, Beijing's main transportation. After 3 stops, I gave my seat to a pregnant woman. The bus crawled along like an old ox, creaking and belching black smoke. Inside it was warm from all the thick winter clothes, but the smell was terrible: sweat, cigarette smoke, and occasionally someone letting one rip, triggering a round of cursing from the whole bus. I actually enjoyed watching all this. Then a girl's movements caught my eye. She was 18 or 19, skin a little dark but smooth, with pretty features. Floral padded jacket, gray scarf, small cloth bag on her arm. An ordinary Beijing girl. Except I recognized her from my past life. I pretended not to notice and watched carefully. She was standing next to a middle-aged man in a gray jacket who had a black briefcase tucked under his arm, probably some low-level official. His eyes kept drifting to the curves under her tight jacket. That pathetic look of wanting to stare but not daring to, yet unable to stop. Disgusting. The bus lurched. Everyone swayed. The girl reached up to grab the overhead bar, turning slightly, as if reaching into her bag for a handkerchief. The movement pushed her chest right into the man's line of sight. His eyes glazed over completely. In that instant, I saw it clearly, hidden beneath her cloth bag. Her hand flicked a blade across the side of his briefcase. A stack of bills dropped silently into her bag. Then she bumped forward into his chest and pulled away just as fast. In that split second of contact, his wallet vanished from his pocket too. Then, smack. She slapped him hard across the face, eyebrows sharp with fury. Pervert. The bus pulled into a stop and the girl stormed off, leaving the middle-aged man holding his cheek, stammering to the whole bus. I'm not a pervert. Everyone stared at him with disgust. The driver didn't care, doors closed, bus moved on. I'd gotten off too. The girl circled back to the bus stop, thinking she was in the clear. I leaned against a tree nearby and spoke up lazily. Nice work on that lift. How about we split it 50-50? She froze and turned to look at me. Just some teenager squatting by a tree, smiling at her. She snorted and turned away. I lit a cigarette and said casually, Wu Xiaohua, known on the streets as the Jade Guanyin. Orphan, raised by the old pickpocket Wu Laodao, the one they call Old Buddha. She went stiff. I knew her whole story from my past life. She'd been abandoned as a baby and found by Wu Laodao at a temple. He raised her, but not out of kindness. He trained her to steal so she'd support him in old age. He took on an apprentice named Hong Daqing for the same reason. As Xiaohua grew into a beautiful young woman, Wu Laodao started getting ideas. First it was touching her shoulder, making dirty jokes when drunk. Then he tried to force himself on her. But she was fierce. She fought him off. By then she was stronger than him. She and Hong Daqing had grown up together and fallen in love. After the attempted assault, they ran away and set up on their own. Years later, in 1968, Wu Laodao would track them down, crying and begging forgiveness. They'd take him back in, soft-hearted despite everything. Then one day while Daqing was out working, the old bastard drugged Xiaohua's food, stripped her unconscious, and was popping virility pills when Daqing walked in. He grabbed their iron hammer and smashed Wu Laodao's skull like a watermelon. That case ended up on my desk when I was temporarily assigned to the pretrial department. I investigated, felt deeply sorry for them, and highlighted Wu Laodao's history of collaborating with the Japanese during the war. He'd done terrible things, even killed people. I downplayed the couple's thieving background. The higher-ups reviewed the file, released them immediately, and ruled they'd done a public service. They got housing and real jobs. They finally became normal citizens. So I was basically their savior. They just didn't know it yet, and none of that had happened in this timeline. Right now, Xiaohua assumed I was a fellow thief who somehow knew her background. She lunged at me, grabbed my hand, and screamed, "Help! This man is harassing me." I smiled, flipped her wrist, and caught the razor blade hidden between her fingers. Go ahead and yell. Let's see who they arrest, the pickpocket or the pervert. People were already running toward us. I let go of her hand and grinned. Until next time, Xiaohua. Name's Qin Debao. I'll return your blade when we meet again. I took off running. She reached for her sleeve and realized all 5 of her hidden blades were gone. She looked at her hand, face flushing red. Little thief. How dare you take advantage of me? Next time I see you, I'll skin you alive. From there I headed to Jiang Women Police Station to find my second senior brother, Zhu Zhixiong. He was Master Tong's second disciple. A military man who'd trained in Beijing since childhood, joined the army as a teenager, and got assigned to the police station as deputy chief after being discharged with injuries 2 years ago. We were martial arts brothers, but 16 years apart, so we didn't see each other often. I got lucky, he was on duty today. The moment he saw me, he jumped up from behind his desk and bear-hugged me. I knew his strength had no off switch, so I blocked with my arm. He was surprised when I pushed his arm aside and threw in Yama 3-point strike. I deflected with my left hand and wrapped into a Beijing grapple. He dodged, but caught a scrape on the chin. Now he was really interested. He came at me with Iron Mountain Lean, a signature power move. I smiled and countered with my own Iron Mountain Lean. He actually had to step back. Well, little 6, just 1 month and your skills have jumped this much? I'm impressed. He was a military man at heart. Nothing earned his respect faster than fighting ability. The fact that I'd held my own against him, even at partial strength from both sides, made him visibly warmer. Second brother, your Iron Mountain Lean is getting harder than ever. My shoulder's still numb, I said. He beamed. Everyone loves a compliment. He pushed me into a chair poured hot water since he had no tea leaves, and sat down. So what brings you here today, little six? I wrapped both hands around the warm cup, thawing my frozen fingers. Second brother Zhu sat down and looked at me. Little six, you definitely came for something. Is someone giving you trouble? Tell me. I'll handle it. No, it's about Master's family. His smile vanished. What happened? I've been too busy to visit this past half-month. Master's health is okay, but the family situation can't go on like this. If things don't change, I lowered my head, eyes stinging. Shifu's wife can't hold on much longer. Zhu's fists tightened until the veins stood out on his hands. I know, but Master is. The way he is. We couldn't speak badly of our teacher, but the truth was Master Tong was still a Manchu aristocrat at heart, obsessed with martial arts, completely useless at everything else. His wife held the family together doing odd jobs. The other disciples visited with food when they could, but everyone had families of their own and could barely feed themselves. We both went quiet for a moment. Brother, you once mentioned a war buddy at the train station police station. I was thinking, could we spend some money to buy Daping a job there? Even a temporary one would be fine, as long as it could become permanent, Zhu sighed. He'd wanted to help Daping before, but two things always stopped him. Daping's bad family background, and the kid's immature, playful nature. I heard the train station police bureau is being dissolved before New Year, I said. The station will be split off from the city police and put under railway management. That means the political background checks will be relaxed for a while, but not for long. We need to squeeze Daping in during that window. I'd heard rumors about the reorganization, but didn't know the timing. Are you sure? I was absolutely sure. In my past life, someone I knew got in exactly this way, and his father bragged about it every time he drank. Zhu's eyes lit up. He grabbed the phone on his desk and dialed. Train station? I'm looking for Chung Jian. Chung, you blind bastard. It's me, old Tai. Listen, I hear your station's getting handed over before New Year? Of course my intel's good. That's why I was deputy squad leader, and you were just a grunt. Stop cursing. You can't outfight me or outdrink me, so quit showing off. Anyway, you know my master? Right, only one master. His son, my junior brother, he's 18. He covered the phone and turned to me. How old is Daping? 18. 1 year older than me. He nodded and continued. 18. I need you to set him up at the station. Even temporary is fine as long as he can convert to permanent. Yeah, his background's a bit rough. Obviously, if his background were clean, I'd have put him in my own station. I don't care. You're helping whether you like it or not. Don't forget, if it weren't for me, you'd be dead 800 times over. What's that? How much money? 800 minimum. Fine, we'll pool it from the brothers. No problem. What do you mean maybe? It's happening. I'll buy you drinks after. Done. He hung up and sat back down. I pulled out a pack of Zhonghua cigarettes and handed him one. He took it, then did a double take. Little six, you don't even have a job yet. How are you smoking premium cigarettes? I lit one for each of us. I've got money. Shot a few wild boars near Wonger Mountain a few days ago and sold them. Sold them? You know private trading is banned, right? Relax. I sold to my dad's factory cafeteria. The steel mill? Then you're fine. Brother, your buddy says someone at the station is retiring and selling their position for 800. We have to lock it down. Absolutely. But the money, the older brothers and I will pool it. I pulled a stack of bills from my bag, actually from my space, counted out 800 and set it in front of him. He slammed his hands on the desk and stood up, face red with anger. What are you doing? You're a kid without a job. You think I'd take money from you? We older ones will figure it out. I pressed his hand down gently. Brother, hear me out. Your family is 7 people living on 2 salaries. I know you skip breakfast every day to save food for your parents and kids. You volunteer for overtime shifts just for the few extra mao and to eat at the station instead of at home. Can you honestly tell me you have 200 yuan in savings? I'd be impressed. Big brother's wife has been sick for years. Medicine costs eat everything. Third and fourth brother are in the army. Fifth brother's situation, you know what his mother's dealing with. Where exactly are you all going to find 800 yuan? Sell your blood? This is money I earned hunting. I gave half to my mom and kept the rest specifically for Daping's job. You have to take it. But don't tell Master or his wife. Just say your war buddy owed you a favor and arranged it for free. Zhu sat back down slowly, ashamed. A grown man outdone by a teenager. He grabbed my hand and couldn't speak for a long time. He understood why I didn't want the teachers to know. They were too proud. If they learned I'd paid for Daping's job and couldn't repay me, they'd never be able to face me again. Someone came looking for Zhu just then, so I said goodbye and left the station. I found a quiet spot, pulled out the bicycle, and pedaled hard toward Master's house. When I got close, I stashed the bike and filled an empty flour sack with cucumbers and tomatoes from my space, just 5 or 6 of each. The rice, flour, and meat I'd brought last time should still be lasting, so vegetables would do for now. At Master's house, he was doing horse stance in the yard and immediately tried to drag me into sparring. But I was angry with him this time. He was just like those old aristocrats and scholars who live in their own world while their wife and children struggle on the edge of starvation. Completely selfish. I gently pulled free and went inside. The room was barely warm. Shifu's wife and the 2 little ones were huddled on the kong under quilts. She was coughing while doing embroidery work. I almost cried. She'd always treated me better than her own son Daping, always saving food for me. This woman from the south had married into the north and spent every day just barely surviving, pouring her sweat and blood into keeping an irresponsible husband and 3 children alive. In my past life, when they finally lost their home, she hanged herself. Master stopped eating and drinking and followed her 7 days later. If us disciples hadn't stepped in, the little ones would have starved. Daping, come sit on the kong where it's warm, she called out, her soft southern accent long replaced by Beijing dialect. I forced a smile. I'm looking for Daping. Is he back? Got home last night. Still sleeping. He was saying he wanted to find you today. I touched little Ho-Hat's face. Slightly warm. Okay. I set the flour sack on the kong. Both kids' eyes locked onto it instantly. Oh, what did you bring now? Shifu's wife looked uneasy. My classmate got some cucumbers and tomatoes from a heated greenhouse in the countryside. Just a few for Dafong and Ho-Hat. She opened the bag and immediately tried to shove it back at me. No, these are too precious. Take them home. I snapped a cucumber in half and handed the pieces to the twins. We kept some at home. I'm going to find Daping. She grabbed back most of the cucumber from the kids, broke the shorter half in 2, and gave them each a piece. You 2 eat so fast. This is enough. Mama will cook the rest later. I went to the side room where Daping slept. It was freezing. Clearly no fire had been lit. City life was worse than the countryside in this way. In the village you could burn twigs and corn stalks for free. In the city, you only had whatever coal your ration book allowed for the whole winter. And with no hard-working man in this house, every meal here was useless. There wasn't even a hint of warmth. On the kong, wrapped in a quilt like a giant cocoon, Daping was snoring away. I ripped the blanket off him. He jolted awake, eyes blurry. Mom, what are you doing? I smacked his head. You bastard. You ditched me and ran off. My mom nearly skinned me alive. He realized it was me and threw his arms around me, grinning. Buddy, I knew you'd be fine. I wanted to strangle him. This guy had gotten me killed twice across 2 lifetimes. I really needed to be more careful around him. But this room was like an ice cellar. Couldn't stay. Get dressed. We're going to Baiyanyufang. My treat. His eyes popped. You've got money? Where from? Stop asking questions and put your clothes on. I'll wait outside. I went out and did horse stance behind Master. Neither of us spoke during practice. Less than 2 minutes later, Daping burst out the door, grabbed me, and started running. Mom, I'm going out with Daping, he yelled over his shoulder. His mom answered from inside. Master didn't budge from his stance, eyes closed, the focus of a dead man. When it comes to Beijing food, roast duck is king. Tourists all go to Quanjude, but real Beijingers prefer Baiyanyufang. Their ducks are actually more authentic because they raise their own. The ducks aren't just fed, they're force-stuffed using secret techniques passed down through generations. Sorghum flour ratios, timing, fat content, everything has its rules. Any duck that doesn't meet the standard gets slaughtered and sold elsewhere. Never goes in the oven. That dedication is why Baiyanyufang has lasted over 200 years. Baiyanyufang moved from Nanjing to Beijing during the Ming Dynasty's Yongle era. The northern version ended up surpassing the original southern shop. Their sign is black with gold characters written by the Ming Dynasty scholar Yang Jixing, with 2 small characters below, Jinling, meaning they never forget their roots. Baiyanyufang uses a closed oven method while Quanjude uses an open hanging method. The aroma when they open the oven carries for miles. Daping practically bounced the whole way there. This was his first time ever eating at a restaurant. He was so excited that if I hadn't been holding his hand, he might have floated away. The place was a 2-story building, old-style gray brick. After the state takeover, tipping was banned, and everyone earned the same wage regardless of effort, so the staff had lost all motivation. One older woman sat at the counter collecting payment. 3 waitresses lounged by the stove chatting, ignoring customers completely. You ordered at the counter, and when your duck was ready, you picked it up at the window yourself. The smell hit me, and my mouth watered. I'd eaten plenty of roast duck in my past life. I sat Daping down somewhere warm and went to order. 2 roast ducks, duck frame soup, 2 side dishes. 18 yuan total, plus 3 jin of meat tickets and 1 jin 6 liang of grain tickets, plus half a jin of bulk baijiu that didn't need tickets. It was midday, and only 2 other tables were occupied, 5 people total. No wonder the staff had no energy. The shop roasted a fixed 20 ducks per day. More would just go to waste. It wasn't that people couldn't afford 8 yuan for a duck, it was the tickets. 8 yuan, 8 liang of grain tickets, and 1.5 jin of meat tickets for 1 roast duck? You could buy a jin and a half of fatty pork with those tickets and feed a family for a week. Who would splurge like that? Bian Yufeng's closed oven method means no open flame. The oven wall's heat alone roasts the duck, making the skin crispy, rich but not greasy, with a special fragrance. When the smell drifted from the kitchen, Daping could barely sit still. He was fidgeting, scratching his ears, bouncing around. The other tables turned to stare at him like he was a monkey. I glared at him several times, but it did absolutely nothing. Duck? Whose duck? A booming voice rang from the kitchen window. I jumped up and went to get it. The tray was enormous. 2 big plates of sliced duck, 2 plates of thin pancakes, cucumber strips, scallion pieces, sweet bean paste, and 2 side dishes, filling a tray over half a meter wide. I peeked through the window, curious about the owner of that thundering voice. Someone with pipes like that should be singing Beijing opera. I saw a figure at least 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, easily 200 jin. What a man, I thought, just as the man turned around. 2 huge eyes glared at me. What do you want? I yanked my head back and fled with the tray. Heart pounding, I set it down and caught my breath. That strapping man was a woman. Leopard head, round eyes. She could have been Zhang Fei's twin sister, just missing the steel beard. Daping hadn't noticed any of this. His eyes were nailed to the duck. He grabbed a piece and shoved it in his mouth, oil running down his chin. He didn't care at all. I smiled. My friend had always been like this, doing whatever he wanted, ignoring everyone's stares. But after decades of friendship, I knew his tough exterior hid a fragile heart. Ever since the class status system began, his family never had peace. He watched strangers take over their rooms, saw his father dragged to political study sessions, and got bullied at school himself. Eventually, he started fighting everyone who laughed at him. One by one, his classmates backed away. The loneliness turned him into a drifter, a street bum. I pulled the tin flask from the hot water, poured him a cup of liquor. Without looking up, he grabbed it, drained it, and kept eating. I took my time. I spread a thin pancake, laid down cucumber strips, a piece of slightly sweet scallion, a smear of bean paste, and a slice of duck skin with crackling. Rolled it up and chewed slowly. That long-missed flavor flooded my taste buds, and I couldn't help letting out a satisfied hum. I'm a creature of habit. Bian Yufeng for roast duck, Dong Lishun for lamb hot pot, Xiaochong Chun for braised offal. Always the same places. After demolishing an entire duck, Daping finally slowed down and came up for air. I poured him another drink. He looked at me, stunned. Damn, man. It's only been a few days. You're like a different person. Normally I could never out-eat you. Shut up, I said, eating a duck roll. And you've got nerve talking. You talked me into going fishing, I nearly drowned, and you dumped me at home and ran. Are you even human? Give me a break. Your mom practically came at me with an axe. Of course I ran. I carried you home. What more do you want? Fine. Quit with the pitiful act. It's disgusting. He grinned and leaned in with his cup, whispering. So how'd you get money for this? You gotta cut me in, man. I'm so broke I'm wiping my ass with rocks. I punched his arm. Back off. We're eating. Come on. Tell me. Look at that traitor face. I earned it hunting. You? Hunting? You can't even beat me in a fight. I blushed. The old me really couldn't beat him. He'd trained since childhood while I started late. But now? 3 of him couldn't take me. Believe what you want. I rolled my eyes and kept eating. He paused. Wait, you actually went hunting and sold the meat. Keep your voice down. Do you have to broadcast everything? He looked around nervously, then leaned in, excited. We're bros, right? Next time you go hunting, take me. I curled my lip. Pathetic. Daping, there's another reason I brought you here today. Second brother and I found you a job. It's pretty much a done deal. His chopsticks froze. A piece of meat fell off. You and second brother found me. A job? A job. For real? He practically shouted. The cashier lady glared daggers at him. Of course for real. I wouldn't waste time messing with you. He went completely blank. All through the rest of the meal, out the door, carrying the leftover dishes, he was still in a daze. Standing outside by Yufang, I sighed, pulled 50 yuan from my bag, and pressed it into his hand. I patted his shoulder. Daping, our parents are getting old. We need to grow up. Take care of yours. Use this money to buy some coal and get your mom some cough medicine. She's been coughing for too long. I'm already getting someone to find cotton. Once I have it, I'll bring it over. All right, I'm heading home. I stuck my hands in my pockets and walked away. Behind me, Daping stood frozen on the street. After a long time, tears streaming down his face, he whispered at my back, "Thank you, brother." In that moment, I think he really did grow up a little. I didn't go home. I rode my bicycle to the consignment shop. I wanted to buy some antique furniture for my space, somewhere to sleep properly. I was getting better at using the space every day. I'd figured out that the land outside the courtyard and the inside worked differently. Outside, crops grew on fast time, harvesting every 3 to 4 days. But inside the courtyard, everything was frozen in time. Rice, flour, oil, meat, anything stored in those rooms stayed fresh forever, never rotting. It amazed me, but it also made everything feel unreal, like this rebirth was just a dream. I kept worrying I'd wake up and find myself alone again. Just thinking about Wang Wali and red sandalwood furniture made my blood run hot. In my past life, Uncle Zhang taught me how to appraise antiques, and I got pretty good at it. But I spent all my time taking care of my sister and dad, so I never really pursued it. When Uncle Zhang died, he left me a room and a few treasures. One was a Ming Dynasty Changhua chicken cup. In 1998, when my sister spent 6 months in the hospital and I was completely broke, I sold that cup for 8 million yuan. That's when I realized how valuable his things really were. Now I was reborn and financially free. If I didn't pick up some heirloom antiques, I'd be an embarrassment to reborn people everywhere. I didn't go to the consignment shop on Pingan Street, too small, and Uncle Zhang worked there. If I bought furniture that didn't end up in my home, he'd get suspicious. I couldn't let anyone know about my space. I headed straight for Shiji Gate, where the biggest consignment shop in Beijing was. Consignment shops were basically the modern version of old pawn shops, all secondhand goods, but state-run with fair prices. Rich families who'd fallen on hard times would sell their things here. Most of the inventory came from confiscated property of former capitalists and landlords. There were real treasures mixed in. The shop was a 3-story building the Japanese had built, with a big warehouse in back. The first floor sold clothes and shoes, mostly 9/10 new. Tons of Western suits and cheap-how dresses, even some fur coats. None of it sold, though. Nobody dared wear a Western suit, and cheap-how was out of the question. Everyone wore linen jackets and work uniforms. Nothing interested me downstairs, so I went to the second floor. At the stairway, 2 display cases held second-hand foreign watches, Girard Perregaux, Omega, IWC, Tissot, Cartier. I've always liked Omega, understated, right level of quality. I spotted a vintage one with a brown leather strap, 90% new. 150 yuan. I bought it immediately and slipped it into my space. Half the second floor was furniture. The salesman was a young guy in his late 20s, lounging on a sofa reading comic books. I browsed around. Everything looked ordinary, maybe 50 or 60% new. Nothing special. But I knew the good stuff was never on the showroom floor. I smiled, pulled out a cigarette, and offered him one. He looked surprised but took it. I lit it for him. "What's your name?" "Wei Ping." "Brother Wei, I'm Qin Debao. Just moved to a new place, and I'm looking for quality furniture." I casually slipped the whole pack into his pocket. He grinned. I knew how to play the game. "Easy. Let me grab the warehouse key from my brother. He's the manager here," he added proudly. "Whatever you like, I'll give you the lowest price." That's how things worked. State-run shop, The salespeople earned the same whether they sold everything or nothing. 5 minutes later, he was back, jingling a big ring of keys. That's what one pack of cigarettes could do. He led me to the back warehouse. When he opened the door, my jaw dropped. Not a lot of pieces, but every single one was magnificent. All Wong Wally and red sandalwood. My eyes couldn't take it all in fast enough. In the future, this wood would be worth its weight in gold. An inch of wood for a foot of gold, they'd say. But right now, it was just slightly more expensive than regular furniture. There was a Wong Wally desk, a red sandalwood canopy bed carved with bats and Rui symbols, meaning good fortune. The carving clearly done by a master craftsman. I couldn't decide. Everything was tempting. Finally, I picked a red sandalwood canopy bed, a matching vanity table that looked like it came from the Imperial Palace, a Wong Wally Luohan daybed with a small side table, a complete set of red sandalwood cabinets, and a Wong Wally desk with a scholar's armchair. In the future, every single piece would be worth tens of millions. The furniture was excellent, but not the absolute best. The finest pieces were still in the hands of old aristocrats and former capitalists who hadn't hit rock bottom yet. But the 3 years of famine were coming. When people got desperate enough, they'd trade anything for food. I wasn't in a rush. When would antiques become dirt cheap? Not during the political storms, during 1959 to 1961, when people were literally starving. And for the dozen years after that, nobody ever really ate enough. Wei Ping found 3 cart pullers to load everything up. I went downstairs to pay 560 yuan total. That was a lot of money. An apprentice worker made 18 yuan a month. My purchase was worth 3 years of their wages. The shop girls nearly ate me alive with their eyes. Young, handsome, and rich was apparently every girl's dream husband. Even the cashier kept pestering me about whether I had a girlfriend, practically holding my receipt hostage until I answered. 2 lifetimes of being single, and I still couldn't handle that kind of attention. I turned red and mumbled that I had a girlfriend. Hearts shattered across the counter. On my way out, I spotted a black calfskin messenger bag at one of the counters. European design, simple and classy. My old school bag had a hole in it, and I needed something to cover for pulling things out of my space. 12 yuan. Not cheap, but I bought it instantly. I also got a doll for Nano and a set of building blocks for Erbau. I said goodbye to Wei Ping and asked him to keep an eye out for a set of carving knives. He said no problem. Sitting on the cart with the furniture, running my hands over the wood, I felt incredibly happy. The ride from Shiji Gate to Nano Guxiang was long. When we reached a quiet stretch, I had the cart pullers unload everything. I paid them 80 fin each, and they were overjoyed, thanking me over and over. People back then were genuinely grateful for small kindnesses. Once they left and I made sure nobody was around, I waved my hand and swept all the furniture into my space. Then I pulled out a burlap sack and filled it with 10 jean of cotton and half a bolt of black fabric. My brother and sister's padded jackets barely had any cotton in them. They needed new ones. Mom's winter coat was falling apart too. What made me happiest was imagining my family's bright smiles when they saw these gifts. I'd spent over 1,300 yuan in one day, counting Daping's job. But honestly, spending money felt amazing. No wonder women in the future love shopping. It really does spark joy. Back home, I dumped the cotton and fabric on the comm. Nano and Erbau went wild, rolling around in the fluffy white cotton. Mom was beaming, though she grabbed both kids and lightly smacked their bottoms. Nothing makes a mother happier than seeing her children warm and fed. Then her worry kicked in. Daping, where'd you get cotton tickets and cloth tickets? I leaned close to her ear. No tickets. I bought it at the black market. She smacked me. You went there? If you get caught. Relax, Mom. Daping was keeping lookout. And if anyone came, I'd just run. You know nobody can outrun me. She still looked worried, so I added, my second senior brother said if there's trouble, just drop his name. Small stuff like this is fine. That finally quieted her down. I pulled out the doll and building blocks from my new bag. Nano pounced on me, wrapping her arms around my neck, kissing my face until it was covered in drool. My heart was completely full. I know I'm biased. I'd buy my sister anything without blinking. In my past life, she never left my side for decades. If she needed an organ transplant, I'd rip mine out with my own hands and give it to her. As for my stinky little brother, he can buzz off. The building blocks were actually bought for him, but the second Nano batted her eyes, I forgot and gave her everything. Erbau stared at me with his sad puppy face. I looked away, unmoved. I was about to start cooking when Silly Zhu's little sister, He Yushui, knocked on the door. She was 14, polite kid. Daping, my brother invited you over for dinner. He says he wants to discuss something. A dinner invitation was unusual these days. Nobody had enough food to spare. In the countryside, visiting relatives had to bring their own grain. I told Mom and followed Yushui. Mom thought it was probably about the steel mill needing more meat and hunting. That worried her. Courtyard 95 was a 3-section compound housing over 10 families, 60 or 70 people. After liberation, the neighborhood committee set up courtyard managers, unofficial positions mainly to watch for spies and settle neighbor disputes. Courtyard 95 had 3 managers. First manager was Yi Zhonghai, a level 8 fitter at the steel mill earning 99 yuan a month. Second manager was Lu Haizhong, a level 7 forge worker. Third manager was Yin Bugui, a primary school teacher famous for being as stingy as Uncle Ma from our compound. Together they were known as the 2 biggest cheapskates in Nano Guxiang. I walked through the ornate gate into the middle courtyard, the biggest section, side rooms packed with families. It was dinner time, so adults were cooking and washing vegetables at the communal sink while kids ran around screaming. My niece Qin Huiru was at the sink washing baby diapers in the freezing water, her 4-month-old second daughter strapped to her back. She called out to me, "Little uncle," and I answered. I was younger, but a generation above her in the family tree. Her life would be tragic. In 2 years her husband would die, leaving her alone with 3 kids and a nightmare mother-in-law. She'd eventually end up with Silly Zhu, but never really had a good life. Speaking of the mother-in-law, out she came. Jia Zhangshi, waist and hips the same width, a face like trouble. The fighter jet of shrews. The VIP of battle axes. She glanced at me, recognizing me from her son's wedding as one of her daughter-in-law's relatives. I didn't bother acknowledging her, said a word to Huiru, and walked straight into Silly Zhu's place. His home was 1 main room plus a small side room, kitchen included. The walls and ceiling were papered with old newspapers from the factory. That's what people used for insulation. I was holding a bottle of Maotai. Silly Zhu was cooking, and his eyes locked onto the bottle instantly. He loved his drinks. They say famine never kills the cook. Silly Zhu had inherited real skill. His father He Daqing was a genuine successor of Tan family cuisine. Later, Silly Zhu studied Sichuan and Shandong cooking under the head chef at Taifeng restaurant. I smelled something wonderful. On 2 stoves. One had steamed chicken in an iron pot, the other a clay pot slow-braising chicken on low heat. 2 generous meat dishes. That was a proper feast by today's standards. Nobody could afford 7 plates and 8 bowls. Got lucky today, Silly Zhu grinned. Had someone bring a chicken from the countryside, over 3 jin. I'm making half into steamed slippery chicken and the other half in a braised clay pot chicken. You and me are drinking proper tonight. I'd eaten his braised chicken in my past life. Absolutely incredible. I'd even learned the recipe from him so I could cook it for my sister. The braised chicken was a Hangzhou specialty, inspired by beggar's chicken but cooked in a clay pot, without water on low heat for about 2 hours. The flavor was out of this world. Silly Zhu told me dinner would be ready in 20 minutes. I sat down, and something from my past life came to mind, something that happened to him. I was debating whether to tell him when a man walked in. Mid-40s, crew cut, thick eyebrows, big eyes, stern righteous face. Yi Zhonghai, the first manager of Courtyard 95. He and my dad worked in the same workshop, and he was always bossing Dad around. "Zhuzi, you have a guest?" His voice was low, face like stone. Silly Zhu wiped his hands and smiled. "First, uncle, have you eaten?" "Yes. Just here to let you know. Courtyard meeting at 6:30. Don't miss it." "Got it." Yi Zhonghai glanced at me with a cold expression and walked out. I had no idea what his problem was, but then I figured it out. He recognized me as Qin Qingyo's son. He and Dad didn't get along at work, so he was taking it out on me. Soon the food was ready. Silly Zhu called his sister Yushui from the side room, where she was doing homework, and the 3 of us sat down to eat. I put the Maotai on the table. Silly Zhu snatched it up and hid it in his cabinet, then pulled out a bottle of Erbau instead. I nearly lost my mind. "Huh, we'll drink this one. Save the good stuff for New Year. I don't care about what I drink. I actually prefer Erbau's sharp kick anyway." Yushui ignored us and dug right in. She lived at school and ate bland cafeteria food all week, so getting meat at home was a big deal. Silly Zhu and I drank fast. We both had strong stomachs and a taste for quick drinking. One bottle went down in no time. He rummaged through his cabinet and found half a bottle more, so we slowed down to savor it. So, Zhuji, you invited me for a reason, right? Just say it. We're brothers, he grinned. All right. First, thank you. That meat you sold our cafeteria made me look incredible. Even Deputy Director Lee praised me. I got promoted to group leader with a pay raise. That's great news. No need for thanks. It's all in the drink. Cheers. We clinked cups happily. Second thing, I need a favor. There's about 40 days until New Year. The factory's doing a 30-day training competition, and leadership ordered the cafeteria to keep the workers well fed. But the meat plant only gave us 200 Jin after our director spent 3 days whining and dining their boss. That's nothing for 10,000 workers. So the director thought of you. Can you help us out? He'll pay 50% above black market price. I thought about it and nodded. All right. I'll head into the mountains in the next couple days. But I can't promise a specific amount. Hunting doesn't work that way. I'll do my best. Silly Zhu was thrilled. That's all I need to hear. We drank a few more cups. Then I gritted my teeth. There was something I needed to tell him. Staying quiet would be wrong. Zhuji, there's something I have to say. It wouldn't be right to keep it from you. He looked confused. What is it? Sounds serious. My dad went to Beijing on a business trip a while back and ran into your father. I had to pin this on my dad. It was the only believable cover. Dad had actually mentioned it once about a year ago, probably forgot all about it by now. But I remembered. What I was about to say would come out years later anyway, causing a huge fight between Silly Zhu and Yi Zhonghai. Silly Zhu froze. Yu Shui's chopsticks stopped midair. 6 years ago, when Silly Zhu was 16 and Yu Shui was 7, their father He Daqing abandoned them and ran off with the widow Bai. 2 underage kids left behind. Absolutely heartless. That wound never healed. Touch it, and it bleeds. Silly Zhu's grip on his porcelain cup turned white-knuckled. Don't mention him. When I carried Yu Shui all the way to Baoding to find him, that woman wouldn't even let us in the door. We stood outside in the freezing cold for 2 hours. He never showed his face. From that day on, we had no father. Yu Shui's eyes filled with tears. When she needed a father most, he'd walked away. Her heart had shattered that day. I know how you feel, but some things you and Yu Shui need to know. Silly Zhu's eyes went red. He picked up a piece of chicken and chewed mechanically. I could see his hand trembling. Your father told my dad that the first year after he left, he sent you both 10 yuan every month. Starting the second year, he sent 15. He also wrote you letters. What? That's impossible. I never got any money. He said he was worried you two were too young to handle it. So he sent everything, money and letters, to first manager Yi Zhonghai. I stood up, tore a page from a notebook, and handed it to him. This is your father's work address in Baoding. Silly Zhu jerked back like he'd been shocked and fell off his stool. He sat on the ground for a moment, then grabbed the paper. Tears streamed down his face. This can't be real. It can't be. He'd spent 6 years believing his father had abandoned them completely. But now, Yu Shui was already sobbing uncontrollably. Silly Zhu could barely stand. After a long while, he looked up. Brother, I can't wait. I have to go to Baoding. I have to know that my father didn't give up on us, that he didn't throw us away. Yu Shui threw herself into his arms. I'm going too. He steadied himself and wiped her tears with his rough, shaking hands. No, you have school tomorrow. I'll go alone. The neighborhood office is closed, so I'll get a travel letter from the factory. There's a midnight train to Baoding. If it goes fast, I'll be back tomorrow. Daping, watch Yu Shui for me. Of course. I think you should go. He stumbled out the door like a man in a trance. After he left, Yu Shui walked me out. In the middle courtyard, there was a small stone platform, 7 or 8 square meters, originally a little opera stage, now used for drying laundry. A table and 3 chairs sat in the center. The courtyard meeting was about to start. Most residents had gathered, standing or sitting on little stools. I decided to stay and watch the show. Our compound only had 6 families, too small for meetings. The 3 courtyard managers emerged from first manager's house in a solemn single-file line, each holding a big tea mug in one hand and fanning themselves with the other, walking with the gravity of national leaders. I curled my lip. These guys weren't even part-time neighborhood workers, completely unofficial. yet they marched out like they were heading to a state summit. The 3 chairs were arranged like the ranking seats at Water Margin's Liangshan. The order was precise and non-negotiable. First manager Yi Zhonghai sat center. Second manager Liu Haizhong and third manager Yin Bugue flanked him. Yi Zhonghai sipped his tea and cleared his throat, a move he'd copied from the steel mill's director Yang. The imitation was perfect, both in form and spirit. Anyone still missing? Any leave requests? His self-importance was flawless. Third manager Yin chimed in, smooth as ever. Everyone's pretty much here. Silly Zhu ran out a minute ago in a rush. Probably stomach trouble. Fine, we won't wait. Old Liu, you chair tonight's meeting, right? Liu Haizhong cleared his throat, pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, and squinted at it. Dear teachers and classmates, Liu Guangtian, you little bastard. What kind of speech is this? The whole courtyard burst out laughing. Liu Haizhong had only finished primary school and needed his son to write his speech, and the kid had handed him a school essay by mistake. And this man dreamed of becoming an official? Yi Zhonghai tapped his cup lid on the table. Quiet down. Tonight's meeting is serious. I'll speak instead. It's the same old topic. Do we still value our Chinese traditions? Do we respect our elders? Do we maintain harmony among neighbors?